It's a little wobbly. Good on, everybody.
Are we ready?
Unless you want to give it a minute and wait for Jim.
Let's wait for Jim. We got 4, 5. We're good.
Quorum.
We got a quorum.
Rock and roll. Kurt, are we ready? Yep. Sure. Your show.
All right. Welcome, everybody. My gosh, we have a full house tonight. To the November 1st Aviation Advisory Board Meeting for Lawrence Regional Airport. I'm Clancy Maloney, your chair, and I will turn it over to Scott right now to give the usual rules and regs.
Good evening. My name is Scott Wagner. I'm the Lawrence Airport Manager. Welcome to the November 1st meeting of the Aviation Advisory Board, and I just have a few housekeeping items for this hybrid meeting. City staff and Aviation Board.
This is Ron. There's no sound.
Kurt, do I need to do anything?
Yeah, I'd unmute if I were you.
Scott, you guys are muted if you can hear us.
How about now?
There we go.
All right, I'll start over. Good evening. My name is Scott Wagner. I'm the Lawrence Airport Manager. Welcome to the November 1st meeting of the Aviation Advisory Board. I just have a few housekeeping items for this hybrid meeting. City staff and Aviation Board members will be in person at City Hall. Virtual participation is allowed for any participant, including staff and the public. Live public comment can be made in person or at City Hall or virtually using the Zoom link. This meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the city's YouTube channel and cable channel 25. If you're on Zoom, please remember to mute yourself during the meeting. When you are not speaking, the chat function for this public meeting is disabled and all chats will go directly to me. When the chair calls for in-person public comment, individuals should indicate if they wish to speak and staff will direct you to the podium. Individuals participating via Zoom should use the raise hand function to indicate that they wish to speak. Please state your name before speaking and comments will be limited to 3 minutes. The city reserves the right to mute people or turn individual videos off to minimize distractions during the meeting. And now I'll turn it back over to our board chair, Clancy Maloney.
Thanks, Scott. Uh-oh.
If anybody up there has an unmuted mic on Zoom, please mute it because that's the feedback we're hearing.
Okay.
I think yours is unmuted. If you need to mute.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I got that. Yeah, please do not unmute the Zoom mic and you're on.
Okay, thank you. First item of business is to receive the draft
Got no
minutes.
sound on Zoom again.
Kurt, do I need to keep this one unmuted?
Yeah,
Okay.
that way people out there can hear.
Okay.
We're good.
You think we'd have this down by now?
Okay, I'll start again. First order of business is the minutes from the August 2nd meeting. Does anybody have any corrections or updates?
Board Member Gardner moved to approve the meeting minutes
Okay.
of August 2nd.
Do I have a second?
Board Member Coleman will second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay, the motion carries. And I have a motion from the chair to alter the agenda today, and I will read it to you. I've talked with, or I've at least alerted the board and both of the entities involved with this. The chair moves to reschedule agenda items D5 and D6 to separate single-topic special meetings. And I will need a second on that at some point, and any discussion.
So discussion, separate meetings, since they could be competitive, how about one meeting followed by another, followed by a third that allows us to ask questions about both in the same third session with both parties?
Any other comment?
I think that makes good sense, yeah.
Carrie?
I was going to ask if you had a timeline that you were thinking about.
As soon as possible is what we'd like to do. David, do you have anything that you want to add?
Not at this time, no.
Okay. Well, how would you like to proceed, Greg?
Well, Do I modify that motion, or?
I think you'd have to, but I think we probably need to hear, that's going to be presented to us.
Right.
We can discuss it at that time or at our next regular meeting also. So
Okay.
I think it's going to take a while to get through both of those sets of proposals.
I would think so. We could ask questions for each one, but if there are things that cross over or are conflicting, you might need to listen to both to be able to ask questions to both at a regular meeting.
We can always add another meeting.
Okay.
So could we start with this?
Sure.
Is that okay?
In that case, I'll second the motion.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Scott, let's you and I try to figure out when this room is available. And maybe after the meeting today, we can figure out when we might be able, if everybody has their calendar, we can figure out when we can get this done as soon as we can. Okay? Okay. Let's moving on to the staff items.
I think you're
Ms.
at public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. I always forget that. Public comment. Is there any? Richard?
Richard Haig. The one thing I'd like to address is a lot of things happening at the airport that should be out in public, should be in front of the city commission, that are not being brought in front of the city commission. Back in 21, when the Lifestar hangar was put up for sale, it did not ever go to this board or to the city commission for the sale of the property. It was told to the Aviation Advisory Board the property was to be sold because the city did not want to maintain it anymore, and started going out for an RFP. The problem with the RFP was there was absolutely no accommodations in that RFP for our Lifestar operation. So the hangar was going to be sold out from under Lifestar. The way that all happened fell apart. The RFP was declared invalid, and then Lifestar was allowed to lease the hangar. The city still owns it. At that same time that appraisal was being done on the Lifestar hangar, an appraisal was being done on the community hangar to sell it as well. That was immediately stopped by the city's legal department. Fast forward to this year, it once again has been put up for sale, or so they tell me it's not. But on June 5th of this year, Ron All was hired by Scott Wagner to do an appraisal for the sale of the community hangar. The city commission has never been made notice of this, and nobody else has either. But those documents exist. The appraisal is out there. And when things like this happen, they need to be in front of the whole community. They need to be brought in front of the city commission. And as the board does things and proceeds with things, that question needs to be asked. Is where we are now, should this have been brought in front of another board? Should this have been in front of the city commission before we sell a community hangar that was bought with federal grant money, has grant assurances tied to it, and contracts tied to it? Should this not be put into a meeting officially before we start offering it and getting appraisals done on that hangar? And so I ask the board, as you look at things, look at it as if you're going to present this to the city commission. You're going to have to justify what we do, whether it's a large contract for a master plan or whether it's other things. Did we vet these people, or were they vetted properly? Is the negotiations for the price appropriate? And just is the whole procedure there? And I just encourage you guys to look for that and for things to be more open than they are now. Bring them out in the open before they start creating issues.
Thank you, Richard. Okay. Any others? Okay, Mr. Wagner.
Thank you, Clancy. I think just a couple thank yous on my behalf before I get started on my airport manager's report. I especially want to thank the chair, Clancy Maloney, for her time and dedication since our last aviation board meeting back in August. It seems like it was just yesterday that we met here, but boy, has a lot happened, and Clancy and our vice chair, Chris Coleman, have put in a lot of time and effort between meetings, especially with all the work that the boards and structuring committee has been doing. Clancy spent a lot of time preparing for that meeting in September and again in October. She and I and Vice Chair Coleman have met several times between meetings, and I just want to thank especially you two for all the time and work you've put in between meetings, and I'll get started on my report. And there's Jim. Welcome. I'm just going to highlight a few things here because we've got a packed agenda tonight, so I'm not going to go over all the details of my report. Pull that up. Let's see. I have a highlighted version here. The Four States Conference, I was super happy that our board members, Greg Gardner and Carrie Gooch, were able to attend this year. I thought the presentations were excellent at Four States, even better than the past couple of years that I've attended. And I did attach several of the presentations that were made, and I wanted to highlight at least one of them that stood out in my mind. It was a presentation by Jeff Dietering, who is a Lawrence resident and also a FAA Central Region planner, that he gave on agricultural spraying operations at airports. And that presentation was joined by a couple of ag sprayers as well. And that kind of caused me to take a look at our airport's adopted minimum standards. And currently we don't address that in our minimum standards. And I think that's something to look at. So I have reached out already to the Aviation Management Consulting Group that we've been using the past few months to have them take a look at updating our minimum standards and get those to you guys for some changes on agricultural operations, because I think that's something that's missing. I wanted to highlight the bipartisan infrastructure legislation. If you recall, we obtained a grant about a year ago to renovate our terminal, and that project has an update on tonight's agenda as well. Last year, about this time, we applied for a second round of funding to fund the improvements to our long-term parking area and our airport access road, which we had designed with the first round of grant funding, but we weren't able to get that second round of funds. The third round opened up here this fall, and we submitted yet again on October 2nd. So I'm hopeful that we can continue to make those improvements, because we've already got that project designed, and it'd be great to get the requested third round of funds in the amount of roughly the same amount as the first round, about $1 million. But later in our agenda, we'll also talk about the KAIP, the Kansas Airport Improvement Grant, and we applied for some funding under that program to also expand our long-term parking area. I wanted to highlight a third quarter budget adjustment to the airport budget. If you recall, I think I reported on earlier this year that we were able to secure some funds from Southern Star Gas Company for their installation of a high-pressure gas main across the airport. We shifted some of those funds to obtain new airport furniture, and I just got approved PO this week. So with the terminal project, we'll have some new furniture here soon, hopefully by the end of the year. And I also want to report that we were able to shift some funds to the monument sign that's long been discussed out at Airport Road, and the design for that was originally drawn up by Gary Fish a long time ago and presented and approved by the Aviation Board. So I'm happy to say that I think Kyle has a PO maybe in the works. I saw Kyle, yeah, on that. So we hope to have a new monument sign out at Highway 2440 here soon. I did post that city staff kind of engaged with our planning staff on the wind turbine regulations, because it had some language in it regarding the airport. And if you followed the paper, there was a big turnout at that meeting last week here in this room, I believe. Not much larger than tonight. And I think that meeting lasted till midnight, so we don't plan to go that long tonight. A couple other highlights. I think it was about a year ago, reported that we were working on an airport sanitary sewer study. I think a draft of that has been prepared, and we hope to present more information on that in the spring when we have that data. And that report will tell us how to convert that existing holding tank out at the airport into a sanitary sewer pump station, and how to build out sanitary sewer to that side of the airport to connect to that new pump station, and hopefully some data on when the flows will require that to be done. I think I'd highlighted this year that I've been serving on this Kansas Airport Joint Task Force, and that was really coming out of the past Kansas legislative session where our association, the Kansas Association of Airports, had really lobbied for an increase in KIP funds. Kind of the compromise that our association came with to KDOT, and especially KDOT Aviation, was to form a task force to make some recommendations to the KDOT secretary. That report was wrapped up a couple weeks ago, and that initial report was made to the secretary, and it highlights really the gaping needs in funding aviation statewide. Our association had some concerns because the KDOT aviation director left at the beginning of October, and he was really a driving force behind that report. So myself and the vice president of the association met today over in Topeka with the acting KDOT aviation secretary, Davis. He is in the multimodal division of KDOT Aviation. We also met with the acting deputy director of KDOT Aviation, Courtney Smith. They seem, convinced that the momentum of this task force report is going to continue and carry forward, especially into the next legislative session. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to secure, hopefully, increased funding to that program, hopefully with a legislative enactment to that statute in the next session. But our association is continuing to work on that. If you came in early, as part of that task force, KDOT Aviation put together cool YouTube videos on a lot of Kansas airports that shows their flight data, and I had that up and running, but that's on my report. It's out there on the internet. It's also posted to our airport website. If you click on that, it shows all the flight data in and out, just from the filed flight plans at Lawrence Airport for 2022. I attended, along with others from our department, Municipal Services and Operations, the KDOT local consult meetings a couple weeks ago over in Lenexa. I'm happy to say that MSO had a nice slide or two on aviation needs at our airport, and I was happy to hear that the KDOT secretary actually spent a couple minutes talking about aviation versus roads and bridges and pedestrian projects at that meeting. So it's a hopeful sign that at the highest level of KDOT, at the secretary's level, they've gotten the message that aviation needs more funding in the state. Just a couple other things, and then I'll get back to our regular agenda. I think I skipped over it here. I wanted to also let you know that the City of Lawrence did respond to the RFP that the Kansas Association of Airports put out regarding conference host sites for the next few years, and we are in the running to host a Kansas Association of Airports meeting in the next probably 2 to 3 years. We received several proposals in, and we'll have that meeting hopefully in Lawrence in the next couple years. So I want to thank our Chamber of Commerce. Tiffany was super helpful and the Explore Lawrence staff in getting that proposal put together. Probably the final thing I want to highlight is city staff a couple weeks ago met with our local planning staff in terms of how do we make development at the airport easier, hopefully in the long run. And just a highlight of that meeting is on my report today. We are going to work and contract with PEC, which is professional engineering consultants that has an on-call contract with the City of Lawrence to engage them in a replatting of the airport. We think that platting the airport into probably one large lot will help with hopefully streamlining development projects, and so that you don't have to go through an entire, replat and that whole subdivision process through our planning and development code in order to make a project happen at our airport. You'll probably just have to site plan moving forward. And, if we receive some of these projects from Eurotec or Dream Air in the next month or so, we can move either concurrently or at the same time with those efforts. We certainly aren't going to hold anybody's project back with what city staff and PEC will be doing. But we think this would be an effort to hopefully make development a little bit easier and also address some other cleanup items, as I mentioned here, in my report that needs to happen. And finally, a couple weeks ago, Kyle and I met with planning staff and their consultant Clarion that's doing a complete overhaul of the development code, and they're going to take a look at the city. In our chapter 20 of the code has zoning regulations regarding the airport, and they're going to take a closer look at that, and we'll ask Garver to weigh in on any helpful changes that may be needed with the development code. So I think that's it, Clancy. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Great.
Board Member Gardner, a couple of questions and comments. On the bipartisan infrastructure legislation, I saw that you made 3 applications, so good for the perseverance. Do you have any idea when you're going to hear back on that 3rd round?
It will probably be in the spring. I'd have to go back and look at the NOFO, the Notice of Funding Opportunity for that, but I believe it said award announcements would be, and then Jason maybe knows here from Garver. Yeah.
Okay.
But in between now and spring, I will be reaching out to our federal legislative delegation because they've been more than helpful in asking how they can help us with funding requests.
The second is the airport sanitary sewer study. Does it think forward about Dream and Eurotec and more expansion at the airport? So will it have the capacity built into its solution to handle growth at the airport?
I'll probably ask Kyle to speak about that. Kyle Gontritz is an engineer that's been working on a lot of airport projects the last couple of years, and I'm sad to say that he'll probably be moving on and upwards within our department as he's taking over the stormwater management division. And yeah, thank you, Kyle, for all your service at the airport.
Working on the airport stuff, and the answer to your question is yes. That's really the reason that the thing that triggered the study is all the proposed development.
Okay,
So
awesome.
that's to accommodate that development and more.
Thanks very much. And also, the Kansas Association of Airports elected our director here to be its new president. So he's making things happen and some positive things for Lawrence. So congratulations, Scott.
Thank you, Greg.
I did want to, I attended the Four States Conference, and one of the things that I attended that you didn't attend had to do with a tracking system, and I really think that's worthwhile. The thing that you showed that has the flight plan stuff, it does that same thing, only in much more detail, so that when we start to think about what's the economic impact of the airport, it can tell you when people are staying overnight and how long they're staying, and we could figure out a much closer idea, a much larger impact that the airport actually has if we spent the money on that. So that's a recommendation for the future, and I can give you more information.
Well, I can give you an update on that if you like.
Okay.
We had a meeting with that consultant last week. They showed us their economic impact model, and our department director over here, Melissa Sieben, I believe, has that contract to get that work done at our airport.
Awesome.
Yes.
Wonderful.
All right.
It's a great product, and we
Yeah.
look forward to getting that data. It's unique data that we can collect for all flight operations at our airport. That will be super helpful.
Oh, awesome.
Do you know if it counts VFR and IFR?
It takes
No.
every landing and takeoff and tracks the airplanes from origin to here and back, and how long. It identifies all of the regular people that are on the airport so that it doesn't count them as overnighters. It does a lot of things that we can make economic impact calculations from and show how much more the airport's actually bringing to Lawrence.
I believe it does, Jim. They kind of track transponders in aircraft.
Yeah, it uses that automatic dependent system broadcast to
That's what I was wondering.
identify it.
They'll install a sensor at our airport and track all activity.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It wasn't very expensive either.
No, it was, I thought, most reasonable proposal.
Yeah. So anyway, last, and it actually related to Rich Haig, and I think the transparency is really, really important. in boards, in cities. And so I appreciate the comments, and as far as I'm concerned, as a board member, I'll try to make everything as transparent as possible. Thank you, Scott.
Yep.
Okay, any other?
questions?
I was just going to ask on that, the sewer system, when they're adding it, are they expanding it so it'll benefit more of North Lawrence as well, or is it just going to go to the airport?
It's going to go to the airport, to the existing sewer in North Lawrence.
Okay. so
Other
it's-
sewer improvements in North Lawrence would be separate projects.
Okay.
It actually, I'll tell you a little more, it'd be a pretty small force main, and it has to be pretty small because of the amount of, it has to get through there pretty quickly. Like a larger force main would have problems. It would take weeks to transmit that distance. So it'd be a small force main, but with the tank and a small force main, then we wouldn't have to pump out the holding tank as often.
Would it allow for expansion from North Lawrence? Because I think that was one of the hesitations when it was originally started.
No, just the airport.
Okay,
This is Ron. On that sewer project, I thought I heard something about linking up does that mean that we're looking at linking up the west side of the airport to this sewer system as well, or is that going to stay on septics the way they are now?
We're looking at that as an option with the study.
any other questions? Okay. Next, agenda items, terminal construction progress report. Who's doing that, Scott?
I have that. CMT was our engineer for that project. We've typically had Andy Bodine come. Andy left CMT kind of as this project was close to getting started, and we've been working, Kyle and I, with Tyler Horn and Wade Compton, who were both involved with the project, and they've done a great job. And let me get this document up. They did provide the update document. Yeah, so just some highlights. Basically, we're at the punch list stage of this project. It's really gone well and been timely. All the project deadlines have been met so far by First Construction, and they've done a great job with it. The project started kind of right after the 4th of July. Wade included some highlights from the first phases of construction, which remodeled some of the parking area right in front of the terminal and around the airport terminal sign. And that was kind of the first phase of the project. We've got some highlights there. And, you know, if you've been out to the airport lately, you'll notice that, you know, we were able to add quite a few parking spots with the reconfiguration of the circle parking in that area. Put down some new base. We attempted with this project to address a lot of the grade drainage issues we were having, especially around the terminal. As far as the punch list items, we still are waiting on that final coat of asphalt, and we'll get down to kind of the last ticketed items here in a second. A temporary occupancy permit was issued at the first of this month, so that basically means, you know, the project is complete. We've been working with Lloyd staff. Some of Lloyd's staff should be hired as project inspectors, I think, for the city, because they did a good job of pointing out a few things that needed to be accomplished yet. And we're just down to some punch list items, so I'm kind of waiting to hear from our consultants kind of the final timeline, but everything should be completed within the last 30 days. There was kind of a backlog in terms of getting the new skylights for the terminal. They just put back the old ones right now, so if you've been out there and looked up, you probably wondered why those look so bad, but we're still waiting on those. The new access door to the canteen area, and the new restroom we constructed last year has been installed. It has a key code on it. I know we've got some questions about that. We'll be getting that information out to pilots that need that information and posting that with kind of the final punch list. We'll get that done. Some pictures from the inside. Again, it was just some great updates to that 1980s finish that was inside the terminal. And if you haven't been out there, it looks great, and it'll look really great once we get some new furniture here in the next month or so. Remove some of the kind of the faux finishes there, new carpet, new paint, ADA door openers, new lighting in the canteen area, new tiles, roof tiles in the canteen, and in the pilot's lounge. And this here is the new door leading out to the terminal lobby that we'll be able to lock after hours to provide that access to the bathroom in the canteen area. And there's that exterior door with the key code on the outside.
I'm going to share so then
Oh,
people
I'm
can
sorry.
see your screen.
Yeah.
Real quick. Oh gosh.
I thought I'd done that to start the meeting. That's right there.
Okay.
Thank
I'll get
you.
out of your way, then you're
Yeah,
good. Okay.
sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, folks online. I thought I had shared my
None of us
screen.
on Zoom are seeing those slides at all, Scott.
I am going to share right now. Sorry about that. You guys see that now?
Yep.
Oh, great. Thank you. Sorry about that. Just some final pictures of the new paint, new pilot's lounge, new flooring. Again, it was a great team at First Construction. Brian Gay and Jason Knudsen did a good job. Sunflower Paving did some of the parking improvements. So I thank that group of folks for working hard on that project, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Anyone? Okay.
Thank you.
And next is T-Lane Taxilane project.
Brett Holt from Garver is going to give us an update on that. And yes, it is a little behind schedule. MSO staff and Brett met with the folks at Sunflower Paving and R.D. Johnson a couple weeks ago. And since that meeting, they've picked up their effort out there and making good progress. So I'm going to turn it over to Brett. We don't really have any pictures, or I posted the notices that went out to the tenants, but we don't. For the folks online, we don't really have any thing to share. We'll just let Brett give our project update.
Yep, so they are behind schedule, but yeah, after meeting with them, they picked up the pace, and we did get an updated schedule from them today, so there is light at the end of the tunnel. They'll be working on the sub-base placement tomorrow and Friday, and then they'll start the aggregate base on Monday and get that going and have the concrete drives to the hangars poured on the 7th, and then finally should be wrapping up on the 10th with all the remaining asphalt that they've got to get down on Taxilane C and A and B as well. So we're getting close. Just hopefully no more weather delays, and keep them cruising and be wrapped up next Friday. Less paint and everything, but we're getting there.
So I can get my airplane back.
Yep.
Any questions for Brett on that project? And if you haven't been out there to the airport, I encourage you to get out there, drive around the taxi lanes. It was a much bigger project once I saw it on the ground than just viewing it on paper. And hopefully Chad and Tina had improved the drainage between that T-Hangar A and the Eurotec hangars, because that was definitely some low spots through that area as well. And they're working on that this week. So definitely on the west side of taxiway A with the new drainage ditch and the drain tubes off of that T-Hangar. With the rains, it looks like everything's working well. So.
Yep, it does. So definitely some improvements there. And that pipe over there should go in middle of next week, so.
Excellent.
All right, thanks.
We'll miss the river. Yeah. Hopefully no more river.
Okay, and here we go. This is what's going to take us some time tonight. Let's see the update and see what's going on with the runway feasibility study.
Yeah, so
Right.
we have John Rostas here from
I
outside of Birmingham, Alabama with Garver
Oh.
to give us an update on that project.
Welcome to winter.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it was, and full disclosure, it was 32 degrees when I left home this morning. So, and I'm having a little bit of difficulty clicking into the presentation on here. Is there does that need to go from, do I need to take control here or?
Kurt, can he run it from up there?
Which one do you want? Runway feasibility study or paper 2? What are you looking for?
The runway feasibility study -AAB.
That first document?
Yep.
Well, I don't have control either. Yeah, try and click on it, then you have to share it like it's a Zoom meeting. But you gotta open that. Oh, Scott's still sharing.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, good job.
I will stop share.
All right. Let's see here. All right. Can everyone see my screen okay?
No, you gotta hit share.
No?
All right.
Green button at the bottom. Yep.
There we go. And share. All right, can everyone see it okay? All right, great. Well, like Scott had said, my name is John Rostis. I'm a senior aviation planner with Garver, and I've been privileged to work with Scott and the City of Lawrence on the runway feasibility study for the Lawrence Regional Airport. So really quick, what I am just going to do is take a moment to just kind of cover what our actual scope of work is and really kind of help set what some of those expectations are of what we're trying to uncover with this project in particular. So really, our objective was pretty clear. It was to identify what the Lawrence Regional Airport would need to do to accommodate the Boeing 717 and the Boeing 737 for athletic charters to support KU. That's it. So what we're looking at doing through that is identifying a study that's going to provide a range of recommendations and alternatives that could be reasonably employed to help accomplish that end result. So what we did as a part of our actual scope of work was we did an inventory of existing airport conditions. This included reviewing existing airport plans, documents, coordination with the city on some of the additional environmental factors surrounding the airport, local zoning regulations, things of that matter, and then also a comprehensive site visit to actually identify and assess the airport conditions as they are today. So that brought us to the facility requirements. And the facility requirements section is basically an identification of what the airport needs to do from both an airside development needs, and when I say airside development needs, that's purely just considerations of the runway system, the taxiway system, and the aircraft parking apron specific to accommodating the 717 and the 737. So that limited our scope to runway 1533, taxiway Alpha, taxiway Bravo, and the existing aircraft parking apron. And then additionally, too, from an administrative perspective, we also evaluated what the requirements would be for the airport to accommodate Code of Federal Regulations Part 139, and that would be the administrative actions that would be needed to accommodate those larger sports charter aircraft that are operated with the 717 and 737 types. So from there, what we were able to do is we were able to identify, all right, this is what the airport has, this is where the airport needs to go to accommodate this specific objective. From there, we were able to develop a series of airfield alternative developments. And that included 3 alternatives for runway 1533, and actually now 5 apron expansion alternatives as well, too. So we'll be getting into some of our findings here and how we can best accommodate those in a moment. So we'll get into the facility requirements section. So we identified 4 critical items that would need to occur at Lawrence Regional Airport to accommodate this type of operation. Runway 1533 would need to be extended up to 6,300 feet to accommodate the 717 and the 737. Taxiways Alpha and Bravo would need to be widened to 50 feet, and the taxiway fillets would need to be widened as well to accommodate the main gear width. There would need to be an expansion or potentially construction of a new aircraft parking apron. And then additionally, runway 1533 would need to be strengthened as well. Brett, feel free to correct me on my numbers here, but I believe if the airport started to incur more than 50 total annual operations of a 737 aircraft, the runway would only last about another 1.2 years. So there is additional strengthening requirements that were recommended as a part of this study as well. So I'm going to get in really quick to how we arrived at those conclusions. So first, I'm going to start with our aircraft range analysis. And what we did was we basically looked at what's our target aircraft and where's this aircraft going to go. So we looked at other schools that were in the Big 12 conference to help identify really what's our envelope for identifying aircraft range. So we were able to coordinate through airport planning manuals that are released by Boeing to help identify what our actual range envelope is going to need to be to help us get to an appropriate runway length so aircraft that are operating out of Lawrence can successfully perform that mission. So we were able to identify that the Boeing 737-800, which we viewed as a critical aircraft for this project, would need an approximate runway length of 6,300 feet to be able to accomplish that mission.
Is that contaminated or dry?
That is dry, yes. So we did use dry factors for this as well, just from a planning perspective.
Did you guys take contamination in any of the study?
We did consider it as well. We did view that it was going to be such a limited amount that it would also materially change the amount of runway length that would need to be occurring, that realistically it would create a lot of other challenges as well too. So from a runway length perspective for takeoff, it was viewed as dry. We did run an analysis on landing calculations as well for a dry and wet runway as well. We found that the aircraft would be able to land in both conditions there.
With the new members or the coming new members of Big 12, it goes all the way out to California. So when you fill up an airplane here going farther, does that have an impact on what your study does?
So there might need to be additional modifications then made to the actual payload or fueling capabilities of the aircraft at that point. Right now, we viewed that like Florida and Arizona and Salt Lake City area as kind of critical destinations at this point. That's not to certainly say that aircraft could not perform beyond that, but additional modifications to their actual takeoff weight might need to occur as a result of that. We weren't really conservative on our weight modeling for this as well too. We assumed fully loaded aircraft just because football players, they're generally, they weigh a little bit more than I do. So they also have a lot more equipment than I generally travel with, or you might generally travel with as well. So we really kind of view this as from a passengers and cargo perspective, a very heavy aircraft as well. So that's what we took into consideration when we did our initial runway length performances as well.
It would have been a
Could you
full
guys
load.
wait on your questions until he finishes his presentation?
Okay.
Please?
Okay.
I'll give you plenty of time.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I do appreciate the questions as well here too. This is fun. So, like I was stating here, that this is something that helped us arrive at our ultimate recommendation length of 6,300 feet, tying back into that first recommendation we made for the air side. So our recommendation to widen taxiway Alpha and Bravo as well here too. So as you can see here, this is a turn model simulation that we performed for the Boeing 737-800, turning from taxiway Alpha onto taxiway Bravo. The red highlights here that you can see on the screen represent the actual wingtip clearance areas that are reflected here off the ends of each wing. And then the blue areas here are actually the main gear path as well. So now what you can see here is the actual wheels themselves are on the inner portion of the blue line closer to the aircraft. And when that aircraft is going to be taking that turn while it is following the runway, the taxiway center line, in both cases it would go off the paved surface. Additionally, too, even while it's on a straightaway, the margins for their operation would be incredibly narrow. For a 737 aircraft, the FAA does recommend a 50-foot wide taxiway as well. So that was really what drove us towards making that recommendation to widen out taxiway Alpha and Bravo, and also widening the fillets, which are the areas where you basically turn from taxiway surface to a different taxiway surface or to a runway environment to help make sure that we're not going in, not going into the grass. We're not tearing up lights. Nobody likes that. So that's what we're trying to avoid with that as well. So we made that model here for taxiway Alpha onto taxiway Bravo. And then we also did a simulation for this here for taxiway Alpha 1 onto runway 33 departure end. This was also run additionally on the 15 end, and we were able to identify the same results. So for clarity's sake, we're only going to show one runway end here today, but it is the same result on both runway ends. Additionally, too, we looked at the existing aircraft parking apron's ability to accommodate a 737-800 operation. We used jet blast contours as our constraint to help us identify where the aircraft would need to reasonably park to not impact terminal area operations.
Yeah.
So we ran, and it's a little tricky to see on here, so we can increase the line weight in our final report, but we ran 35 and 50 mile an hour jet blast contours on this as well. Those are metrics that are outlined by the FAA as well that helps us kind of identify what we can do within those developmental envelopes. So that's where we arrived at the position of where that 737 is shown on the apron there. Now, as you can see, 737 parked in that area where jet blast isn't going to materially affect any of the terminal structure as well. It eats up a lot of space. So as a result, we did feel that without impacting existing tenants or transient tenants that would be utilizing the aircraft parking apron, some sort of apron expansion would need to occur. So that really kind of gets us into some of the additional, just what we viewed as actual infrastructural needs to accommodate the 737 and 717. But another component to this as well is, what does the airport need to do from an actual regulatory perspective to accommodate this type of aircraft? So these are considered commercial aircraft as well that do operate on an unscheduled basis. So Part 139 is an airport certification licensure by the FAA that airports would need to adhere to if they were to accommodate basically aircraft such as these athletic charters. So there is a range of your level to adhere to Part 139, and it goes from Class 1, that's going to be your airports like Kansas City International, your Wichita's. We're regularly accommodating scheduled passenger service. The stringent, the level that they're held to is not necessarily the same level that would need to be held to if you're hosting occasional sports charters by a similar type of aircraft. So as a result, we identified that this airport would fit into a Class 4 requirement for Part 139. This is similar to what you see at Tuscaloosa, Alabama, where they host the University of Alabama, and Fayetteville, Arkansas, which hosts the University of Arkansas athletic charters as well. So basically what this is unscheduled accommodation of aircraft such as the 737, primarily for charter activities. So what would need to occur from a regulatory perspective and to help maintain that Part 139 license is the airport would need to adopt an airport compliance manual. That has worked in tandem with the FAA's Airport District Office and their 139 regional inspector. And what is going to be part of this airport certification manual is basically a guide on how you plan to keep the airport safe and operational for these types of operations that are coming into the airport. So parts of this include an airport emergency plan. So that's going to be a comprehensive plan on basically what happens if something goes wrong. And that is going to help you identify basically how to execute on those emergencies as they may happen. A signage and marking plan as well. This is basically a delineation of where all the markings and signs are on the airfield environment that are going to be utilized by those aircraft that are doing those those athletic charters out here. And then additionally, there's also training that the airport staff would need to go through on an annual basis as well. And the FAA also inspects those documentation records as well to make sure that basically you're keeping your staff up with the documents that are in your ACM and that you are proficient and able to act on that ACM when you need to. Another key component of this as well too is that there would be the necessity for aircraft rescue and firefighting capabilities on the airport. Now, you would need to have trained personnel on the airfield 15 minutes before and 15 minutes after those operations. So you wouldn't need to have like a full-time firefighter out of the airport 24/7 because you're getting a few sports charters every year. But when those sports charters do come in, you would need to have qualified personnel that are here within a certain window around those aircraft operations. And as a result, you would also need a specialized aircraft rescue and firefighting truck that has certain agents in it that are able to basically help in things like jet fuel when it's burning or something like that. So it's able to properly extinguish and minimize any further harm during those situations. So the airport would be required to meet an Index B requirement, which is basically like your second up in terms of the scheme of airport fire trucks. So it's you're looking at things like a 1,500 gallon capacity. I don't have the number in front of me at the moment, but basically your ability to respond to actually the lower category from what the 737 is, you basically can do one level below if you have less than 5 daily operations of that particular aircraft. So like I said, the 737 was viewed as the critical aircraft for this study really at the end of the day. So the airport would actually be able to get one level lower because they are not operating here on a routine daily basis as well. Another recommendation we did make as a result of actually acquiring a fire truck for the aircraft operations is the construction of an ARF station, or potentially using that for other uses as well, such as a snow removal equipment building. We felt as a general practice, if you're going to acquire an expensive fire truck, you should probably house it somewhere that's not going to be in the elements to maintain the useful life of that vehicle. So that kind of covers just both the infrastructural and the administrative recommendations that we made through this study. And I'm going to get into now really quick just some of the actual alternatives themselves. So like I had mentioned here, we had 3 total runway alternatives and 5 total apron alternatives as well here. And what I'm going to do is kind of walk through these here. So what we had is we had proposed 3 runway alternatives here, which includes a 600-foot extension to the south, a 600-foot extension to the north, and kind of a split the difference model, which is 400 feet to the south and 200 feet to the north. So our target objectives for this were to hit a 6,300-foot runway length and to meet FAA design standards to the greatest extent practicable. So some of these included, as I'd mentioned, the 600-foot extension, widening taxiway alpha, and then also correcting an acute angle entry on taxiway delta onto runway 1533 that would be converted into a 90-degree entry as well. This also included the widening of the taxiway fillets here as well. So this is a matrix here that is also detailed in the report, but I'm going to be referring back to this as we actually look at the visual depiction of each alternative. So alternative 1 here is the 600-foot extension to the south. We did identify that this would be able to meet the target of accommodating the runway length for the 737 and 717 operations. So there are a few items that we did evaluate in particular that we wanted to kind of share as what our matrices for considerations were here. And that includes potential for environmental impacts, potential for impacts to residential or nearby businesses, any potential Part 77, which is the imaginary surfaces surrounding the airport and instrument approach procedures, and then any potential impacts to road or adjacent utilities as well. And then finally, we also identified what the anticipated developmental cost of each of these is going to be. I see this, oh, perfect. Screen just went out for a moment. So this airside alternative 1 here, we valued at about $33.8 million total. And this, from our evaluative criteria here, we were able to identify that with this extension here, this would require the potential realignment for US Highway 40 to the south of the airport. Now, this would be done to keep the runway protection zone, which is this trapezoidal shape shown off of the runway 33 end there, free of incompatible land uses. The FAA views having a roadway within, or basically any additional inclusion of persons or property within the runway protection zone as an incompatible land use. Now, this surface itself is viewed by the FAA as the aircraft is lost at that point and is trying to preserve additional people on the ground from any further harm at that point. So that's why it's generally trying to eliminate people from that area. Now, one thing to note with this as well is that the FAA does have a risk matrix for this as well, in terms of their ability to help determine, do you actually need to do a full realignment of US Highway 40? Because the reality of it is, at the end of the day, the risk is also incredibly low. So what we do propose here is that we're showing this as a worst case scenario, in that the FAA would in fact require the realignment of the US Highway 40 in order to accommodate a runway extension. But there is the possibility that it may be able to be exempted through an FAA waiver process as well. We've seen that the FAA Central Region in a lot of other cases has been very reasonable in this approach, and they use a very metric and qualitative based formula to help arrive at that conclusion as well. One other thing to note with this airside alternative as well is that it would require the realignment of the existing Mauser system that is serving runway 33. Just naturally, as you shift the runway environment, the approach lighting system is going to need to be shifted as well. This would require the acquisition or easement of farmlands south of the airport as well to help maintain that compatible land use of that runway protection zone. We did view that there would be the potential for approach surface impacts because there would be now including poles and trees off south of the airport as well to that approach surface as well. Potential ramifications of that could include having to either lower or eliminate those obstacles or taking potential impacts on instrument approach procedures in terms of having to have increased visibility minimums. Additionally, too, like I had stated, from a road or utility impacts perspective, we did see that likely it would be possible that the power lines along US Highway 40 would have to be lowered as well. This would also be done in tandem to, one, eliminate the incompatible land use issue that would be as a result of this project, and then also to help prevent any further impact to the instrument approach procedures serving runway 33. So that is just kind of high level what we viewed as some of the potential impacts that we viewed out of alternative 1. So alternative 2 here, it has basically that 600-foot extension, but this would be carried out to the north here as well. So from an environmental impact, we did view that the Mud Creek that is north of the airport would have to go through a potential realignment to be free of the runway object-free area as well. So obviously, as that is a creek right there, that is going to require extensive U.S. Army Corps of Engineer coordination as well, and could have the potential for environmental impact. We did view that there was a residential property or a private property located just north of the runway environment that would need to be removed from the runway protection zone. And additionally, too, that we also viewed that this would also require the additional acquisition or easement control of farmlands north of the airport to help protect for the runway protection zone. Similar to alternative 1 as well, to the levee and any trees north of the airport would be an increased penetration to the approach surface as well. So there could be the potential for the either need to light, lower, or remove those obstacles. And then finally, from a road or utility impact perspective, realistically, we did see that the realignment of East 1500 Road and the levee access road would need to occur to remove the roads from the runway protection zone. This would also include the potential closure of North 1950 Road and the burial of power lines adjacent to the airport as well. So once again, though, those are items that could potentially be scaled back if these were approved through an RPZ analysis by the FAA. But once again, for conservative sake, we did just denote those as changes that would need to occur to meet that design standard to the greatest extent practicable. The overall estimated cost for this was $33.99 million as well.
This says 35.
Pardon me, yeah, sorry, 35.99. My apologies. And then finally here we have airside alternative number 3. And this is a 400-foot extension to the south and a 200-foot extension to the north. And really our kind of guiding principle with this one here was we were just trying to split the difference a little bit to see if we shifted things around a little bit, if it helped minimize and offset some of these impacts. But you still see a lot of those impacts that you are able to, that you are basically getting either through alternatives 1 or 2. So this would require the potential realignment of the levee or Mud Creek. There is the potential for additional environmental impacts regarding farmland and wetlands south of the airport due to the US Highway 40 and Mauser relocations. This would require potential acquisition for the private property located north of the airport, in addition to acquisition or control of the farmlands surrounding the airport as well for RPZ protection. You're still seeing a lot of the similar approach penetration issues, but not as magnetized as you would in either alternatives 1 or 2. And then finally, too, you're seeing basically both the impacts from alternatives 1 and 2 for both East 1950 Road and US Highway 40 being impacted here as well. So we view the estimated cost on this to be about $36.05 million as well. So these are the items that we viewed as what would need to occur to basically get your target number of 6,300 feet. So with that, we will move into the next portion of this as well, and this is what we would need to do for the overall apron expansion alternatives. And what we did is we viewed these on a criteria model of basically what's the total area that needs to be actually expanded, what's the ability of that apron parking area to accommodate the number of aircraft out there, what method of parking they're going to be able to employ. Is it either going to be taxi in and taxi out, which is where they're able to use their own power to basically maneuver in and out of position, or are they going to need to require any tow-in type of capabilities as well, which would be additional equipment that would need to be acquired by the airport or FBO. We also viewed that the proximity to the terminal is a key one as well from more of a passenger experience perspective. We don't want buses and people having to walk a long way on the apron. No one really wants to do that. So we did view that as something to evaluate in this process. And then also what the estimated costs were going to be. So our first one here is an expansion of the east parking apron here. And this is a taxi in, taxi out method for two 737-800 aircraft. And that would require a total expansion of 136,000 square feet. From a proximity to the terminal perspective, this would be able to get passengers and buses up to about 355 feet from the terminal building. And we view that the estimated cost on this would be approximately $6.036 million. Once again, this does tie into some of the initial discussion that we had regarding the aircraft parking apron in terms of considerations for jet blast impacts as well, making sure that those were factored into our parking envelope. In addition to that, we also factored in this existing hangar to the south of this proposed apron area as well, and making sure that their access was not impeded during any of these activities. Once again, too, this also takes into consideration any, not impacting any other existing aircraft parking apron operations shown in the existing apron to the right. So that here is alternative one. Alternative two is a little bit more of a reduced method of this. This is a 73,000 square foot expansion. This would require realistically towing in and towing out aircraft into position at this point. So that does kind of help reduce our potential for jet blast impacts, but this is going to have to be done with specialized equipment as well that would need to be acquired for use in this particular case. The proximity to the terminal is negligible. It's like a 10-foot differential to alternative one, and the real big difference here is the actual cost saving at about $3.298 million. Alternative three here is basically a continuation of the alternative two exhibit as well, but with the inclusion of a new taxi lane onto taxiway Bravo. The total new paved area would be 98,000 square feet, and this does allow taxi in, taxi out operations as well. Once again, you're looking at about a 380-foot distance to the terminal area and an estimated cost of about $4.527 million. Once again, too, this also does take into consideration that there might be some potential for conflict if you had basically an aircraft trying to exit this hangar at the exact same time of aircraft movement through here, but if they're just parked and there is a little bit of coordination, those should be able to operate unimpeded of each other at that point. Another alternative we did view was actually a north expansion as well, too. We kind of want to think a little bit outside of the box with this one here and think, all right, do we need to necessarily go east? What might be some benefits and savings we can get if we just went actual north with this as well? So this would be a 158,000 square foot expansion. So from a size-wise here, within the existing terminal apron area, this would be the larger of the alternatives. So that comes in at about $7.613 million, but this does also net you a third aircraft parking position as well for a 737. Additionally to the way the aircraft are staged, this also does allow aircraft to fuel into the left wing of the 737, which is the preferred fueling method by that type of operator as well. So any fuel trucks that would be operating for this type of aircraft would not have to go around the wingtips or go into the grass, or we do any other additional pavement so they could do fueling from the right side. So this does, though, have an impact of just, it is a greater distance to the terminal area. It's about 640 feet. So just from having traffic on the actual aircraft parking apron itself, there is that increased distance. There is that increased time right there compared to the other eastern apron expansion alternatives as well. But one other final alternative that we've been able to develop here, and this was as a result of our discussions with the city, is any potential development to the south here as well. So this was able to take in just some additional development concepts that are currently out there regarding the south area as well. So this south apron development is about 136,300 square feet of additional pavement. This would give you up to 2 guaranteed parking positions of the aircraft to be able to tow in or out if there's one aircraft, or taxi in, taxi out if there's one aircraft, tow in, tow out if there's 2 aircraft. Some of the disadvantages with this, though, is there's no direct access to the terminal area at this time, and the estimated cost for this was $11.96 million. So with that, that is what we viewed as the overall steps and possible means and methods of accomplishing the target objectives of accommodating the 717 and the 737 operations out here at Lawrence Regional Airport. I'd like to open it up if you folks have any questions.
Okay. Do you have questions, Greg?
Naturally.
Go.
So the one comment and then some questions. I commanded the B-1 bomb wing in Wichita, and so I've flown big airplanes into places that don't have a very well-defined clear zone.
Mm-hmm.
When I flew one into Cheyenne, Wyoming for Frontier Days,
Mm-hmm.
there's a road right short of the runway, and the people looked up as I was coming into land on the first brick, because it's not a real long runway,
Right.
and they banged each other. So the clear zone is important.
Absolutely. Yeah, 927 out of Cheyenne's a mess, so it's no fun.
Yep. So your assumptions are, and I guess it has to do with the sports team charters.
Correct.
Does the plan that you've set up limit you to sports team charters or any charter, so that we could expand the use of the airport beyond sports teams, but chartered 737s?
So are you kind of like referring to like casino charters, things of that such?
Yes, or what if there's a big group that wants to go to Cancun direct and they charter a 737 and fly out of Lawrence?
So let me follow up on that specific request right there. My understanding initially is that would fall into the same classification as well, since it would be that unscheduled charter by that type of aircraft. So from just kind of an initial perspective of how that's viewed at, I would lean yes, but let me verify that as well. Okay. The other consideration too is that some of those fall under Part 380, which is a different type of operation by airlines themselves. So I would want to be very clear that I'm giving you a correct answer on that one. So I'm happy to look into that, though.
So it would either be Class 4 or something else that fits that criteria.
Correct.
Okay. Requires an airport compliance manual, requires an airport emergency operations plan and additional signage. Just for the board, I have talked to Matt Mathias, the KU emergency management guy, and we're going to meet and set up the next exercise, because the last one was when Rich was on, and it was like 7 years ago. So my question then is, should I try to design something into the exercise that would consider these kind of operations to help us build an emergency operation plan?
So the airport emergency operations plan would definitely want to take something like that into consideration, because a big part of that is, like, for example, like mutual aid agreements.
Right.
And that really plays into the, even like large hub airports really rely heavily on surrounding communities and a lot of integration in with local fire departments, even just within the region itself, to make sure that they have basically the greatest force multiplier to help support in the event of an emergency. So From a discussion level, I mean, you would be at pretty much your own leisure to do that as, as an advisory board or under the city's representation. But something like that I couldn't see any con to doing that at this point.
Yeah.
Terrific.
I think from what I read in the expanded version also of your draft, if we go to 139 or anything like that, you'd have to have one of these exercises regularly, like every 3 years or something.
Correct,
That
yeah.
might need to fold that in a little bit.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
More, Greg?
Just emergency management in Kansas is a county level function, but the city is very interested and is working right now on a joint kind of a thing. So I think that will be doable.
Fantastic.
I actually like alternate 4 where you can park 3 of them, which gives us the most growth potential, and there is no chance that you're going to have blast problems by the way that alignment is.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Carrie?
Just one quick question, or maybe a
Absolutely.
quick question. I don't know if this is for you or for Scott or maybe even for Clancy. This was all kind of started before I got on the board. But first off, thank you. I mean, I think this presentation is great. This is awesome.
Appreciate it.
I'm excited to even think about these opportunities here at the Lawrence Airport. My question kind of going into the growth potential, because I'm excited about this, but then my head started thinking about like, well, what would be the next step, right? So I'm just curious on, did you all look at or how we kind of came to the determination of just the 6,300 feet when it came to the expansion? And,
Yeah.
if another 100 feet, if we had that, like what would that do? Would that take us to another level? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is kind of a two-part response here. So within the scope of this study, it was very targeted on what do we need to do to accomplish the objective for KU athletics in accommodating that 737 aircraft. So that's how we arrived specifically at 6,300 feet for this. Now, with the second presentation I'll be doing here today, we'll be getting into the actual airport master plan, which is a more holistic plan that addresses all aviation users and community input as well too. So that might also provide some additional findings as well that might also drive future runway recommendations as well. Did that?
Yeah, no,
okay.
exactly right. Another question I had, you mentioned about like the Part 139 training and that the staff would have to go through that.
Yes.
What all do they constitute as airport staff? Is that anybody that works on the airport, or how does that?
Basically, the folks that are responsible for executing the airport certification manual. So in this particular case, you were looking at a staff of, on average for like a Class 4 airport of this size, about 4 to 5 employees that include airport operations specialists, the airport director, and then first responders as well too, like ARF training records as well. Basically, the folks who are responsible for when there is an emergent situation, they want to make sure that they're adequately trained. So now if this is like, hey, we're working at we're working at an FBO, or we're working for, a mechanic shop on the airport, you're just hypothetically speaking here, they would not be required to have that same level of training. They would not need to have, their records for training are not required under 139. So like for example, I was employed by a Part 139 airport for a portion of my career as well. I was never in a responder role, so they never had to maintain my records for training or anything like that, despite even being directly employed by the airport authority.
All right.
So that
No, go ahead. That's all.
So that leads to a comment, and that we in the master plan should consider an airport authority.
Yeah, absolutely. Airport governance is something that is considered and discussed in an airport master plan as well too.
Perfect. That's all my questions. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Chris?
During the construction phase, if this were to come about, would we have to shut down the airport for a period of time?
So I will defer to my engineering team on that one, but I will say that for a runway extension of that size and length, you realistically would need to, at a minimum, shut 1533 for that construction portion. Realistically, there would be ways to phase that where you could realistically keep like runway 119 open. But there would, if there's ever work in the intersection or anything like that, that's when you'd realistically be looking at like a total airport closure. So long story short, complete airport closure, not likely for the entire duration of the construction, but there might be portions where there would be maybe up to a few days of total airport closure. I will allow these gentlemen to correct me if I am wrong though, because I am an airport planner, not an engineer, so.
So the DC airport replaces 1,000 feet at night when they're closed
Yes.
on a regular basis.
Yes.
So it just depends on how much money is spent.
That is true. And I did work for an airport that would only allow construction to happen between 12 and 4 a.m. on their primary runway as well. It gets expensive quick. Those bid tabs were painful for everyone to look at. So,
the DC airport, going to your question there, Mr. Gardner, I was actually, they're redoing that work that I actually did that work 15 years ago, the initial overlay at you're talking at National Airport.
Right.
That's a very unique situation. Being the primary airport there, we had to basically come up with new rules, so to speak, to work with the FAA in order to mill, fill, replace cans, or replace lights all in one night. Just to kind of give you a little bit of perspective on that, my original design 15 years ago was we had a crew that just went out and cored cans out one night. And the next night they milled full width and pulled the cans out and left a lid on top of the runway. And it was a unique situation in that we defined the millings in such a manner that it felt no different to the pilots than a grooved surface. Because we stayed out there all night, talked to, I think I interviewed probably 50 pilots that came in the next day. And they said they felt no difference, and that was both in a dry and a wet condition. So it's kind of a unique situation that you have there at DC. Not saying you can bring that down to Lawrence, but as we were talking about, it's a cost. It's quite a bit of a cost and penalties. As my colleague John was saying, yes, for a period of time when the strengthening of the runway has to occur, that runway would be shut down. But not the airport until you got into some intersections, and then that could be phased in such a manner where that's a weekend project versus an overnight. It's all about balancing the cost and the timing for this type of work.
So how often do they do it at DC?
Typically a runway overlay is designed by the FAA for about a 10-year lifespan. During this time in 2006, 2007, that was, if you recall, a little bit of a unique period in the airline industry in that we had some acquisitions. Our original plan was we were dealing with the same aircraft, 717s from Air Trans, a few 737s, a lot of commuter traffic going up the East Coast, and they were limited at the time as far as flights across the country because of rules. And they could only fly to, I think, the Mississippi, if I recall right.
DC? I think it was no further than Denver.
No further than Denver at that time. Until they lifted that cap on the number of flights and distances they could fly. Once that happened, it was Katie bar the door at National Airport. Southwest ended up acquiring AirTran. They switched out all of their 737 aircraft, or 717 aircraft into 737s, and ended up being that National Airport started pumping more passengers and traffic through it than Dulles did, which is 40 miles down the road in the international airport. So yeah, it increased the traffic quite a bit and actually accelerated the runway degradation just because you had a lot of increased traffic, heavier traffic going out of that airport in a short amount of time. So our original overlay plan kind of went out the window in the first year. The second year we increased the thickness, came up with the game plan to basically said mill and fill is essentially what it was. So we milled so much at night, the next night it came and filled full width. So it was like paving an echelon, so to speak. So we were always filling the runway and reopening at night. And we came up with the criteria of using the Boeing bump criteria, which is how much aircraft gear can tolerate, and built out like 250-foot ramps on the runway. So always had a smooth transition from new pavement to milled pavement back to old pavement.
But it was 1,000 feet a night.
Yeah.
It was
Yes.
unbelievable.
Yeah, we did 1,000 feet a night. Yeah, they're repeating the same game plan that we did.
We digress.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Jim?
Shouldn't have asked that last question.
The northern apron appears to be the most desirable and costly. Scott, this might be a question for you. That would be the airport's property, or would that be the FBO's property?
Well, it would be on airport property, sure. I mean, all the airport is on airport property except for the west side that the University of Kansas owns, the place where their hangars are.
So I know we have parking issues during the winter season as well. So I think that would make the most sense, and I'm assuming that. And the other question I had specifically for you would, how many 737s are traditionally traveling with a Big 12 football team? Assuming it's one.
Are you talking like fleet-wise?
Like if University of Colorado's coming here? Is it one of them?
It's usually one.
Okay.
So yeah, you're not seeing like a large influx of them. It's the only time I've really seen like a big upgauge for like collegiate athletic charters is like if they're in the national championship. So like, for example, when I've seen like University of Alabama go off, they'll use like an A330 or something like that. That's realistically, in that particular case, you're probably not going to design your airport for that particular example. But traditionally speaking, it's one that we've seen. If there were any kind of like tournament or something like that, like especially on like the basketball front as well too, you may see an increase in aircraft beyond that as well. So from a planning perspective, we wanted to be a little bit more conservative in this and basically just figure out, 2 to 3 we felt was a reasonable range for accommodation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
David, do you have anything? David?
Nothing for me at this time, no.
Okay, I have a couple of things. I know that Doug Tillman has presented to at least me and Scott, and I don't know about anybody else yet, the issue about one of the taxiways northbound to potentially the full length of 0119. I know that wasn't part of the charter, but it is something we need to consider.
Absolutely. So, and we've actually had a discussion on this already too, and Scott's brought this to my attention too. So our recommendation on basic, and I'll try to see if I can pull up a, different one here. Just for frame of reference here, so everyone can kind of see what I'm discussing. Making sure, getting my screen shared correct. All right. So, and just want to make sure that everyone can see this okay. So, taxiway Delta here enters runway 1533 at an acute angle. So basically a non-90 degree angle onto runway 1533. So the FAA does not like non-90 degree entries onto the runway environment. So as a result, we propose a new taxiway Alpha 3, which would correct this to a 90-degree entry. Now, the comment that was initially posed as well too is actually a very forward-thinking comment as well. This is something we'll look at in the master plan in greater detail.
This is the number one thing on the master plan.
Fantastic. Well, I'm glad that's good to note now. So with something as we look into like the actual runway 119 complex as well, since that wasn't included as a part of this study, but is a part of the master plan, that's something we'll look at in greater detail. But Alpha 3 here, what we would look at doing here is basically doing a further continuation of Alpha 3 across here into what we'll just call that a hypothetical Charlie 1. And then that would go in at a 90-degree angle as well, and then continue to turn north towards runway 119, turn northeast towards the runway 19 end, and then turn at a 90-degree angle to enter the runway 19 end. So that would meet the geometric requirements that the FAA does have in place. So since your previous master plan, the FAA did update a lot of their design advisory circular requirements, including those entry angles to the runway environment as well. That's why we made this recommendation, is just for the adherence to the existing FAA standards today. Now, the point was brought up too that it does slow down that basically that access to get to the runway 19 end. That's 100% true, it does. But the reason being is that with that 90-degree entry, it actually expedites the ability of the aircraft to exit the runway, which the FAA views as a more critical capacity item rather than the taxiway system. And then 2, it also increases the visibility from a pilot to be able to see their final more equally on both ends.
Right.
So that was what drove our initial consideration for this Alpha 3 realignment. The master plan itself will also consider that in the overall greater scheme for access to the 19 end.
Okay, and there's one more item that I have on the apron problem. I know it wasn't part of your charter also, but we already have a parking problem on the ramp.
Absolutely.
If we go with virtually any of the first 4, we haven't solved that problem.
Absolutely, and you are correct. This does not address any existing issues outside of the initial project objective as well. Hate to use the line again. There is a project that is forthcoming, though, that does look a little bit more holistically at airport operations. Understanding that there are existing aircraft parking constraints as well, that would certainly be something that would be thoroughly vetted through the airport master planning process. The airport master plan scope of work also does reference the runway feasibility study that is being performed here today that we're presenting with you. So we're able to make sure that we're leveraging the information appropriately and adequately to balance all objectives for the community in that project as well.
Okay. All right, any other public comments? Richard?
Just have one.
Will you come to the microphone so the people online can hear?
My one question is the runway layout, number one, where the 2440 highway is an obstacle.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a safety obstacle or just an obstacle in the runway protection zone? Is the
Right here?
Yes. Well, so when it crosses here with the number, the first one where we're going 600 feet to the south.
Yep.
Is that considered a hazard, or is that just considered something that's in the runway protection zone?
It's considered something that's in the runway protection zone, because even today, it's actually within the runway protection zone as well. These are grandfathered in since this rule was implemented in 2012. If they were to correct this at every airport nationwide, they would have to pretty much shut down every airport nationwide as a result of that, because this is a very common issue. Yeah, very common issue. So the way that we did these layouts here too, these are free of any runway safety area, runway object free area, and approach surface as well too. So
the state of Kansas wouldn't have to necessarily alter 2440 for this to be a safe operation?
Correct.
As long as the FAA granted the exemption?
Yeah, exactly. And to be honest with you, we would prefer to avoid that option as well from a developmental perspective. We understand that's a big chunk of the project cost right there, is just that realignment. Like I said, we wanted to present conservative options as well here too, just assuming that this is your worst case scenario for development. Like I said, with Central Region, we've been able to go through these RPZ risk analysis, and been able to achieve positive outcomes for airports as well through that. That is by no means a guarantee. I just want to make that clear. But that is something that we would definitely want to evaluate as our first option.
So does the report in more detail break out the separate parts of the cost, like?
Yes, it does. Yeah, there's line items for all these as well.
I didn't read that part.
Yep.
The 583 pages.
I skimmed it today.
Sorry about that,
A little
Greg.
much.
So wait, you guys aren't ready for the quiz after this? Because
The answer is C.
They have to stay until.
we'll do
we
some
give it to
multiple
them.
choice if you'd like. So no, they are broken out by items. You can see quantities and our assumptions for how we arrived at our cost estimates as well.
Okay. Anything else on this?
So the assumption.
Chad, would you go to the?
You come to the microphone, please? Yeah, we got some people online.
Chad Decker. So this kind of coincides with what Jim Laster had asked about. So the assumptions that were made with regards to the configuration, the payload of the aircraft, passengers, weight, and all that.
Right.
There were specific assumptions made to determine whether or not the extra 600 feet would accommodate an aircraft type like that? Okay.
Wait, I'm sorry. I think I might have misheard your question. I think I just.
Well, so when Jim had asked the question about what did you factor into your assumptions, what was it, contameration?
Oh,
Yeah,
contaminated
runway.
Yeah.
So either wet runway or snow or what have you?
So yeah, a wet runway in theory would affect that payload capability of the aircraft. So that, or it would affect the range output of that aircraft at that time. So that is something that when you go down and actually plan runway length analyses as well too, there's, a multitude of scenario, like thousands of scenarios that you could plan for with this. So we ended up going with this particular one as we felt that, most likely it'd be a dry condition that they'd be operating under. We used a conservative degree on the temperature for the aircraft actual temperature performance as well, and then we also went conservative on the weight. So we did try to balance out a conservative and realistic method to how we approach the aircraft runway length calculations as well.
Okay, so what happens if you exceed the temperature, or the temperature for that day is above what your conservative number was?
Yeah,
or if the runway is considerably wet, or
yeah,
or it's,
that is a good question.
Yeah.
So that won't, there's not going to be a surefire runway length that you're like, this is going to accommodate every single scenario out there. If that were the case, we'd be looking at your 10,000, your 11,000, 12,000 foot ranges. And even then, there's still no guarantees under that circumstance as well, too. So what we try to do is make sure that we're presenting a runway length calculation that's realistic in terms of these are airports that we can benchmark, that we've seen these aircraft have been able to successfully operate in other environments as well. Okay. But understanding there may be a time and place that, hey, there might be a challenge for that aircraft to operate. But that is an unfortunate reality for any airport out there, is that there might just be certain cases that there's that one time that they might have to reduce their fuel load and they might have to do a fuel stop somewhere, or they have to leave some bags off or something like that as well. So if we were to go like full unconstrained, like this aircraft can take off at their maximum takeoff weight, we do actually list what those runway length requirements are in the report as well too, and they are extensive. They're like 10,000 plus feet in some certain cases. So we felt that a 10,000 foot extension would realistically, from a financial perspective, not be feasible at all realistically, or the impacts would also be far greater, because at that point you're, I think, also encroaching upon the interstate or to the north as well.
So they'll probably,
Total length of the runway after completion?
After this,
Yeah.
6,300 feet.
So midway is 6522.
Correct.
That was the number in my head that I thought we would go to. Since Southwest can bang them in all year round, it would make sense we could do it here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why I was asking the question.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yep.
That's all I had.
Okay.
Thanks. Anybody else?
so the alternative in that situation is what they do now, which is land at 12,000 feet in Topeka. And
Yeah, exactly.
and the bus that picks them up goes to Topeka instead of to,
Or Olathe or whatever. it is,
what's
yeah.
that?
Or New Century,
Yeah.
okay.
They got options.
Are we ready for the next item? Okay.
I think so.
Oh, I hope you're ready.
All right. Better. Are you folks ready as well?
Yeah. How about the master plan?
Yeah, I do have a little introduction on the master plan.
Okay, go.
John, a little staff report I'd like to
Yeah.
All righty.
quickly go through before we turn it back over to
Sure.
John.
Take a break.
Bring that up. So just a little bit of background here, and I might, did you stop screen share, John?
Absolutely. All right. I can. Yep.
Yeah.
There we go.
Share the screen for the people online. All right. So just a little bit of background before we turn it back over to John. So if you recall, it was about this time last year that we had applied for funding for an update to our master plan through the KIP, Kansas Airport Improvement Grant funding. And we were awarded those funds in February of this year. KDOT Aviation gave us an amount of $400,000 for a master plan update. Also, a master plan update has been on our FAA CIP improvement list, although it hasn't been kind of a top 5 priority in terms of our rankings of priority projects. And if you also recall, the Aviation Subcommittee at their report on August 2nd also listed an update to the master plan as a priority. On September 19th, we did have the contract with Garver on the City Commission agenda for approval, and that item was pulled for additional discussions when members of the public and the governing body had some questions about that award. So we decided to take a step back and look at the master plan a little bit further at the staff level, and decided to bring this to the Aviation Board tonight for a recommendation. So that's what brings us here tonight. We are bringing you guys this presentation to make a recommendation to the governing body, and our plan is to get that back on a City Commission agenda on December 5th. The update, it was budgeted in terms of the local share in this year's City of Lawrence budget, which was estimated to be about $40,000. I have attached John's presentation for tonight, and after the September 19th meeting, staff did have some meetings with Garver to further look at their rates for master plan work and the costs regionally and nationally for what airports are paying these days for master plan work. And I've attached a pretty in-depth response from Garver as to the cost for those updates, and I feel like they've provided sufficient answers as to the rates and staff rates in their project. And so I won't pull up that memo, but it is posted as part of the agenda materials. I also want to point out that Garver is under contract for this work. We've received state of Kansas funds for that. We aren't required to go out and do consultant selection. Garver will be getting this contract. It's really just a matter of what the appropriate fee is for this master plan update. The final thing we need board feedback on tonight, Garver, in terms of their scope of work, has identified how they traditionally scope and conduct master plans around the country. They've recommended that we convene a group of community stakeholders. And so Clancy and Vice Chair Coleman and I have floated around the idea of this kind of list. Garver had recommended kind of 5 to 8 people as an ideal working group. And we need your feedback and recommendation to the governing body on the stakeholder group. So we suggest a member of the Aviation Board, possibly our vice chair, a Chamber of Commerce designee, because the airport has a huge impact on our local budget and is an economic driver. We've got development proposals going on at the airport. We feel like that's an appropriate person to be a part of our stakeholder group. And some of our key employers out at the airport, a designee from Hetrick Air Services, a designee from Eurotec Vertical Flight Services, a designee from Dream Air. Certainly we want to have a designee from Lifestar, as we know how important they are to the community. We know how important the University of Kansas is. And then it'd be great to have a local pilot or an airport tenant as part of that group. So those are the 2 items we are asking for the board to vote on and provide a recommendation on tonight. Provide us some guidance on awarding Garver for the master plan work, and then finally recommend a stakeholder group. So I will stop my screen share, and John will give us a little presentation on the scope of work for a master plan.
Absolutely. Thank you, Scott. So, like I said here, so my name's John Rostis. I'm a senior aviation planner with Garver, just for the record, just the new topic here. So one thing I would like to kind of just start off with is, why are we doing a master plan here? And there's a few key reasons. One, the FAA does recommend that you update your airport master plan approximately every 10 years. And your current airport layout plan was last approved in, I believe, 2012. So you're right around at that time frame, just from an FAA perspective, on when this document needs to be updated. But a lot of things have changed in that last 10 years. Pardon me, since your airport layout plan's last been approved. There's been sweeping changes in airport design standards, like for example, what we've depicted here with that taxiway Delta Alpha 3 reconfiguration. That's something that's new, that's happened within the last few years. Additionally, some of the safety setbacks have also changed during that time. So this is a good opportunity for us to evaluate the airport's existing capabilities to today's design standards as well. That's not to say that there is anything done incorrectly in your previous airport layout plan. It's just design standards change, federal regulations change, and as a result, this is the time to update that. Additionally, too, this is also a great opportunity because there is a lot of interest in the airport on a local and regional level. This gives us an opportunity to help the airport and the city and the community identify what the highest and best uses of that airport land are going to be. And then finally, as well, too, there's also a lot of emergent technologies and a lot of exciting things happening in the aviation industry. What can the city of Lawrence do with the airport to help make sure it has the infrastructure in place to be able to adequately capture those changes in the aviation industry? I'm talking things like new new sources of aircraft propulsion like electricity, hydrogen, things of that matter, or even things such as like the eVTOLs or UAS, UAM, which are basically unmanned aerial systems. How are those going to interface with Lawrence over the next 20 years? So that is really what we're going to be looking at doing in the why of the master plan. But what I want to do is get into the master plan and really set some kind of just baseline expectations of what the airport master plan does do and what it doesn't do as well. I feel like that is something that's often overlooked at the start of a project, and it helps. I think it's a good opportunity for us to help set that clear form of communication as to what we're looking to do and what things that people might generally assume with a master plan to occur that might not happen as a result of an airport-specific master plan. So we'll start off with what an airport master plan does. So as it states here, this is going to be a 20-year infrastructural development plan. So we are going to be looking holistically at the airport and the surrounding environment of what is needed to basically bridge the airport from what it has today to where it needs to be 20 years in the future. And that will look extensively at your runway. That'll look extensively at the taxiway system. That's going to look at the aprons. It's going to help identify what those changes might need to be and what the existing ability of those facilities are to accommodate even today's traffic. But now, one of the most important things of this here too is that this is also a collaborative planning process as well. This is something that really, there's a lot of public engagement through this. There is a lot of stakeholder engagement as well too. And the reason being is that ultimately this document serves the city of Lawrence at the end of the day. It serves the people of the city, and it's going to be a guiding document to help really bring the airport to really be what it should be to reflect the community that it serves. So as a result, we have a lot of collaboration with the community through this process as well too. This isn't just a Garver document. This isn't just me typing out a report and saying this is what you should do. This is really what does the city of Lawrence think the airport should be doing in the future. So critically also here is going to be the updating of the airport layout plan for federal funding eligibility. So your airport layout plan is a graphical, conceptual depiction of the existing airport facilities and future airport facilities as well. Now, this is what is going to be key about it, is that for an airport to receive federal funding through the Airport Improvement Program, one of the checkboxes that's going to be on that grant application is this project on your airport layout plan? So for example, as has been mentioned this evening, the extension of taxiway Delta. If that's not shown on your airport layout plan, it's not eligible for federal funding. So that's what we want to make sure that we're doing, especially through this collaborative planning process with the stakeholders in the community, is making sure that we're able to capture where the community sees the airport going, what those infrastructural needs are going to be to make sure that we're able to help maximize your federal funding opportunities through this project as well. One thing I would like to point out too is that while the Federal Aviation Administration is not participating in any funding of this project, we have scoped this project to meet federal standards as well. They have a very outlined process of how an airport master plan must be conducted, and that's our intent to follow it to that standard as well. As a result, we've also engaged with the FAA's Central Region as well through scope of work review and to ensure that they are going to be an active stakeholder in this project, even though they are not a funding partner at this time. We want to make sure that no matter what, they already have a place at the table so they're able to understand where Lawrence is and where Lawrence is going. So with that, we get into some of the items of what the airport master plan doesn't do. So one, this does not guarantee that the development itself will occur. This does not obligate the federal government or the state of Kansas to actually fund any of the projects that are shown on your airport layout plan. Like I said, this is a checkbox you'll need to check to get that funding eventually, but there needs to be a lot of other things that go into the overall airport development process that extend beyond the airport master plan as well. One of those being environmental clearance for projects. So any project that receives federal funding is expected to adhere to the National Environmental Policy Act guidelines as well. We do consider it NEPA for short. So we do consider NEPA impacts as a result of any potential airport development, much like we did with a runway feasibility study, where we looked at potential for environmental impacts as a result of the future development we've recommended there. It's not your clearance, though, just because we've evaluated it through that master plan. It's a consideration, but there still is documented environmental procedures that need to go through to ensure that you're able to meet that FAA requirement for funding as well. Also importantly here, this does not obligate the city for any funding as well of these projects. The way that the airport layout plan is set up is that if there are changes to the city's direction in the future, within that 10 to 20 year time frame as well, the airport's not, or the city itself is not obligated to pay for any of those projects. Just because it is shown on the airport layout plan, much like the federal government has their out, the city also has an out as well too. So because it's just shown on there, doesn't mean that the city has the opportunity to change their mind in the future. So this isn't a be-all, end-all, we've just signed away a bunch of money here and this is what we're stuck with. It is intended to be a flexible and conceptual document to help guide the city as changes may occur in the future as well. And then finally here, this does not provide any specific direction for any business or strategic planning as well. So this is things like market plans, or like marketing plans, like a rates and charges assessment. This isn't going to be like, hey, this is a good way to attract this type of operator to this airport. We'll take some understanding of what some of those potential operators may be and make sure that the infrastructure is in place to support where the city and the stakeholders view the direction of the airport going. But this isn't a, okay, here's a good way of advertising Lawrence to X, Y, and Z company to get them as a new tenant. That's a limitation of this study as well. So that's just kind of a high level of what we'll do and what we're not doing through this project. But I'll get a little bit into the overall process of the master plan itself as it aligns with the FAA's expectations for this project. So there's really 3 key phases to this project. There is the gathering data phase, there is the analyzation phase, and there's the planning phase. So these are all included in the scope of work here as well. But what we'll be able to do is first, when we start with a project initiation, this helps us understand just some of where the stakeholders in the community, what's their perception of the airport? Where do you as a community view the airport going? This is those public open houses right at the onset of the project. This is that stakeholder meeting and that visioning session as well that helps us identify what are the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats for the Lawrence Regional Airport. This helps us as a consultant team understand what is the big picture for the airport in that 20-year time frame. Concurrent to that, we'll be doing inventory of airport assets as well. This is when we get out there, we put boots on the ground, we spend a lot of time at your airport, going through, walking the airfield, and understanding what do you have as an airport today in terms of what facilities do you have? What's your runway length? What's your runway condition? What's your taxiway condition? How many hangars do you have? What are the conditions of those hangars? What are the useful life of your lighting and your navigational aids that are out here as well? This helps us identify clearly what the baseline condition of the airport is today. And then as a part of this as well, we'll also be developing an aviation, or a forecast of aviation demand as well. Now this is something that will be approved by the Federal Aviation Administration, and this helps us identify where is the airport going in 20 years. This will help us identify what your estimated total based aircraft are going to be, your total annual operations, your number of takeoff and landings, pardon me, will be for the airport, and what types of new entrants to the airport might be occurring. Additionally, this will help us identify if there's going to be any change in your critical aircraft. That is going to be the aircraft that drives the design standards for the airport. If there's going to be any monumental change in that, that might affect what our runway and taxiway design standards will be. So this will help us identify basically where is the airport going. So that's when we get into the analyze phase here. So that first part of that is our facility requirements section. That is basically the bridge of, we know what you have, we know where you're going, what do you need to do to get there? This is going to be a series of unconstrained recommendations that are going to basically help us identify this is what the airport needs to do to meet the objectives that basically bridge that gap between inventory and forecast. Now, please note that I said unconstrained recommendations in there because that gets into the next part, which is the alternatives. This is basically what's your actual ability to meet those unconstrained recommendations. This is when we get into a lot of those factors such as environmental, constructability, cost, potential impacts for safety and operations as well. And then additionally too, just what's the overall community's appetite and perception towards those developmental objectives as well. That's, like I said, this is a community document. So we want to make sure that through this alternative process, the community has their input on this as well. So this basically helps us bridge and identify this is what can be done that realistically reflects the City of Lawrence's overall view for the airport. So at that point of the project, that helps us identify what the preferred airport layout and plan for development will be in the future. And that's when we get into the series of how are we going to accomplish this in the next 20 years. And that's where we get into the planning phase. So we'll be able to develop a capital improvement program, which is going to look at various funding sources that might be needed to accomplish those overall developmental objectives that we're going to be identifying in the alternatives. This also helps us identify the phasing of those projects in a manner that is going to be able to capture what your short, medium, and long-term needs are, and also making sure that aligns with the actual realities of federal funding and state funding are as well. We'll also be developing the airport layout plan as a part of this process as well, and that is, like I said, that graphical depiction of what the airport could look like in the future in that critical FAA funding tool, basically making sure that we're marking that checkbox so you guys can get federal funding for this in the future. And then finally, we're able to kind of memorialize all of this and put that into the draft and final reports as well. Now, throughout this whole process, like I said, it's going to be a collaborative engagement through the airport stakeholders, receiving that feedback and comment, and making sure that we're receiving comments that help us ultimately drive this study towards what the city of Lawrence ultimately expects for its airport in the future. So that's just an overall breakdown of what we're looking to accomplish on an overall scope of work. I'm going to get into a little bit of our overall project feed. Now, as Scott had mentioned, the city had raised some questions over our initial proposed rates and fees for this project. And as a result, we were initially proposing a fee of $399,996. As such, we have gone back, we've sharpened our pencils, and we have been able to further reevaluate what our proposed rates for this project would be. And as a result, we've been able to reduce our project fee down to $380,011, of which 90% is going to be funded by the state of Kansas, and $38,000 will be funded by the city of Lawrence itself. Additionally, too, the way that this breaks down is that we also have two other sub-consultants that are on our project team. Their fee remained unchanged. We have a DBE firm, Solco Group, which was a former FAA regional administrator. He helps us craft our airport capital improvement program to really align with FAA expectations, so we're able to make sure that that CIP portion of your document aligns right up to with what the FAA expects, to make sure that you're able to capitalize on FAA funding opportunities in the best way possible. And then NV5, they're our aeronautical surveyor as well. They're going to be flying over the airport and helping us capture what the existing obstructions are today. So their fees end up breaking out to about $12,000 and $85,000 and some change respectively, with Garver completing the rest of the work at about approximately $282,000 as well. That's what we viewed for our overall project fee that we proposed to the city here as well. And what we did was we also made sure that our rates were still comparable to industry standards as well. So what we did was we looked at two other FY 2023 projects that we were able to get access to what their overall project rate structure was. And these are firms that have qualified airport planners, much like myself. Great folks, actually, too. All wonderful people across the board. But so what I've broken this down to are really identifying the key labor categories that would be working on the airport master plan for Lawrence, which includes our planning leader, that's my supervisor, and who provides ultimate quality control and oversight of the project. From Garver's perspective, myself, the senior aviation planner, and then a P1, which is an aviation planner. It's a young woman we have based out of Kansas City as well, who will be working on a lot of the day-to-day administration of this project. What we did is we looked at how these are going to line up specifically to our counterparts at other firms as well. So as you can see here, what I've also included here is what projects specifically these were included on. So for us here, I use our rate that we're proposing here for Lawrence, Kansas, and the airport master plan. We also show a rate for another competing firm for an airport master plan at Hobbs, New Mexico, which is a small non-hub commercial service airport in the eastern part of New Mexico. As you can see, their comparable rates to my supervisor is $303 to $282 for what Garver is charging. For their comparable rate to my position, it's $279 an hour to $253 an hour to myself. And then for our aviation planner position, it's a $166 an hour charge to a $161 an hour charge for a comparable position at Garver. We also did include another competing firm here out of Kansas City that were their rates for the Hill City, Kansas airport layout plan update. Now, you'll notice that their rates are substantially lower than both our number two competing firm and Garver here as well. And With this, you see rates that are at $276 and some change for their principal in charge, $202 an hour for a counterpart to me, and then an average planner rate of about $157 for their entry-level planner position. Now, one thing to note that there is a sizable difference in the overall scope and scale of the project that they are working on, so it's likely that they're assigning a different staff classification to this. We wanted to be transparent in showing all of these numbers here, but understanding that there is a likely difference in the overall project that they're performing. With the airport master plan, that will include a document that's about 250 pages in length. It will include a more comprehensive airport layout plan and the aeronautical survey as well. With Hill City, it's a approximately 15 to 20 page report and a much more abridged airport layout plan drawing set as well. So we did view that there's, from a complexity perspective, a little bit of a delta between what we're going to be doing here at Lawrence versus what they're doing at Hill City. But that was just an overall explanation and just comparison of these rates as well. I won't provide it with any other further commentary. I'm a little biased myself. So, but we did just want to make sure that that is being shared with you in a transparent manner.
So thank you for sharpening your pencil.
Absolutely.
And
Greg, let me start at the other end this
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
He's got a couple.
I do have one more slide as well, too.
Please.
Would you like me to wait until?
No, go right ahead.
Okay, great. Last one here, too, is we did want to just do a sanity check on what our proposed fee for the airport master plan was as well, and how that stacks up to other airports that are performing similar projects in 2023 as well. So we have, I believe it's about 15 airports to a varying scale and capacity here as well. This does include the example of Hobbs, New Mexico, which is a non-hub commercial service airport. But some other qualifiers that we also included in here to help kind of just gauge what the overall level of activity these other airports are is we looked at their NIPIAS level. This is a classification system that basically helps determine that the FAA uses to, is like, how busy are you? How busy is the airport, or, you know, and what role does it play in the overall national plan of integrated airport systems? So you start off with your highest level for that, which is a national airport. That would be comparable to like a Kansas City downtown airport. Then the second tier below that is a regional airport, which is the classification Lawrence fits into. Below that, there are local airports as well. They are, I think we have a few examples that are listed here as well, but an airport like York, Nebraska, for example, is listed as a local. And then there's finally basic. These are airports that are really serving more of a critical access for like air ambulance type of operations, minimal based aircraft, very limited infrastructure as well. We also considered just the total number of based aircraft that are actually at the airport itself. That's not a perfect metric of determining the complexity of an airport itself, but we did find that this is a good metric to help kind of just from a comparison perspective, how does the airport's master plan fee and complexity align with other similar projects as well. So as you can see here, the two commercial service airports that we do have listed on here, two primary commercial service airports we have listed on here, Columbia, Missouri and Hobbs, New Mexico. Their project fees were in that about $700,000 range, just a few $1,000s below that. And then you start to see a range here in that local and regional range going anywhere from $300,000 to about $500,000 as well. So right now what we saw is that the way that this is done in a descending order as well. Our proposed three of $380,011. It kind of fit right around in the overall average. It's kind of right in the middle there in terms of that. But it should be noted too that from a complexity perspective, it is a regional airport as well, so that is going to be viewed a little bit more complex than a local or a basic facility as well. So that was just some additional information, like I said, kind of presented without additional commentary, but just for your visibility to see what some other comparable projects are this year as well. So that covers the bulk of my presentation.
Okay.
Any questions?
Thank you. And as Greg said, thank you for sharpening the pencil.
Happy to do it.
It's much appreciated.
Absolutely.
Okay. I'd like comments from the board. David, would you like to start?
Sure. No, I just appreciate the layout, especially the comparison with other locations, and looking at that, it seems to be, as best to my knowledge, comprehensive in nature and aligned in cost, especially with the reduction made. So it seems reasonable on my end.
Jim?
No comment.
Chris?
No questions.
Carrie?
I do have one question, and I don't know if this is the time to ask questions. I know you're going to do a motion.
I will, but
Should I-
go right
If I have
ahead.
questions about the motion that you're going to make, should I wait until that, or?
Depends on what your question is.
Well, I guess it was more of maybe a procedural question, and Scott, this might be more for you.
Sure.
I was just kind of going back to how you said how we got here to even having to approve maybe this. Is this usually how this works? Is if I'm understanding the right from your background memo that you put together, this came in front of the commission on September 19th, and then they pulled it. Did they pull it to send it back to us to then vote on it to then send it to them, or is this usually how this process works? Again, just trying to make sure I understand what our role is.
No,
in this, I guess.
that's a great question, Carrie. And, the other members of the board know that I've only been airport manager the last couple of years, and I would say in general, and Richard can correct me if I'm wrong, but not consistent practices in terms of what is brought to the aviation board and what isn't. And I'm trying to fix that, and I'd love to fix that. And so one of the staff discussions was, let's go back to Garver and have a discussion about the rates so that we understand them more thoroughly. And that was actually helpful. In fact, city staff is probably starting to dive into more of our on-call engineering agreements to look at the rate structure and making sure that we're getting the most bang for our buck. But no, the city commission actually on September 19th wanted to put it back on the October 5th, I think, agenda, if you go back and look at the video for that. But we thought, with your upcoming meeting tonight, it makes sense to let you guys weigh in and let you guys also provide those recommendations for this stakeholder group, which, Clancy and Vice Chair Coleman and I had just been talking about when we get together on a monthly basis. But it makes a lot of sense for you guys to weigh in on those recommendations. And then when we get that memo back to the city commission, we'll put those stakeholder recommendations as part of that updated memo to the governing body as well.
Okay. Greg, do you want to go first, or do you want to let
Can I
Richard
just answer
talk?
his question real quick?
And I maybe have one more
Did
question
that
about
answer?
that. That did, very, very much so.
Okay.
I just was curious about how this process
Go.
is supposed to work. But one more question maybe about the stakeholder, and this might be more of a request for when we make this motion. I know that, I like the list that we've put together so far, but I was curious on if we could expand the amount of aviation board members on it. Now, I know that we can't all be on it because of meeting records and that type of stuff, but is there a way that we could have 2 or 3 members on it instead of just one?
I don't know the answer to that. Do you have an answer for that?
I think so, sure. I mean, it was just a recommendation from Garver as to, you don't want to have 20 people on a working body. You want it to be, I think, a manageable number, but sure.
Yeah, exactly. It's 100% y'all's discretion on that, on what you want to put on there. We can work with any group size there. We just want to make sure that obviously it's just able to achieve consensus. And
we
your
can't-
definition of consensus and how to get there is.
We can't have more than 3, or we'll
Correct.
get into an open meeting
Yeah.
situation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
all my questions. Thank you.
Excellent,
Yeah.
Gary, thank you. Greg, your turn.
Okay. Well, I did say I appreciated your sharpening the pencil. It didn't hurt that you did the airport feasibility study, so you've done some of that pre-work. And what I was hoping is that when you do the master plan and seek the input from the city, that you actually do some education, because much of the city is not going to know much about this airport because they drive to Kansas City, and that's where they get on big airplanes.
Yeah, and that actually is something about how we like to overall administer a public involvement process as well too, especially in communities where it's served by general aviation airport. A lot of folks have a different perception versus the actual reality of what the airport is as well too. We want to make sure that we're educating the community on, like I said, some of the limitations of what the airport master plan is, what the airport master plan actually will be able to accomplish, and what is actually happening out at the airport as well too. So that those are going to be really some kind of key things we're going to want to try to make sure that we're going to be covering with. So as we're working with Scott, the city staff as well too, we'll want to make sure that's tailored specifically to what's going to be an effective message to convey to the city.
Perfect, because you had mentioned no marketing, and so I got a little concerned.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a perception in the city that isn't as good as it might be if we were going to want to grow the
Next,
airport.
over there.
Sorry, this is Melissa Sieben, Director of Municipal Services and Operations. I just wanted to comment, size certainly, as our consultants can tell us, does matter on how easily they can be effective in their work, but I would not worry so much about the open meetings. I think these are probably things where people could sit in even if they weren't on the committee and actually listen to what's being said. Now, they would, be asked to just sit and listen, but those that would be there, certainly there's no reason for them to be closed door,
Okay, thank you.
unless there's some reason I'm missing. But I think they can definitely be open. I think that's beneficial for the education side that we've been also kind of hearing go through this entire process tonight.
And if I can also add to that too, there is no specific requirement that you can or can't do that as well too. It really is up to the discretion of the city. Garver, as a team, we have worked with a variety of these methods as well too. Really, we serve at your leisure. So whatever is most effective for the city and is most reflective of the city's direction is going to be most beneficial for us as well.
Thanks. I'm going to assume that somebody from the city is always going to be at one of these meetings. Okay, the only comments I have are, we did prepare the Capital Improvements Committee of the Aviation Board a memo in July, and it was approved at the August meeting with the list of our priorities. Have you got that yet? And how do we get that to you?
I don't believe I have a copy of it, but I would be happy to accept a copy of that for additional review.
We will make sure that you get one, and then there are a couple of other items that I think we need to add to it. There is apparently a previous solar idea that was presented that I would like to throw into the mix, and we also have some unleaded avgas transition issues that we might want to throw into the fuel farm issues that we put in there.
Yeah.
So those are trivial things compared with accepting the overall plan. But
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to make sure that they get on the record someplace.
Well, no, we certainly appreciate you sharing that with us as well. Those are definitely things that from an analysis perspective and a consideration perspective as a master plan, those are completely fair game types of discussions to have, and we would welcome any opportunity to get that information earlier than later so we can incorporate that into our...
Happy to facilitate that.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Great.
So,
Greg?
Can I make a motion that we recommend the city commission approve proceeding with the master plan?
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Jim, second. I'll take a vote by person. David?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Gary?
Aye.
Greg?
Aye.
And me, aye. It votes unanimous to proceed. And then I think we need a motion on,
The stakeholder group.
pardon?
The stakeholder group.
On the stakeholder group, so-
Direction on that.
Yeah. Who would like to make the motion on that? The Aviation Advisory Board recommends that the stakeholder group for it's called the Project Steering Committee, correct? Okay. Is comprised of one or two members of the Aviation Board, one person from the Chamber of Commerce, one from Hetrick Air Services, one from Eurotec Vertical Flight Systems, one from Lifestar, KU, and one tenant, and obviously somebody from the city.
Discussion?
Sure.
Based on your input, and if the city attorney said the same thing, I think you could go to 3 if you wanted it.
Again, for open records purposes, it just requires, or open meetings, sorry, CORA versus COMA. For COMA purposes, it only requires if there's more than 3 of you for us to have notice.
As many
So-
as 3 then.
Yeah, and so, honestly, if one of you showed up to listen, that would trigger open meetings. My deference would be if there are 2 or 3 of you on there, we're going to notice it anyway. I'd rather over-notice than under-notice on open meetings. So that's kind of where I'm at. So if you guys have an interest to attend one of these and only 2 or 3 of you are there, great, but we're going to go ahead and notice these anyway, because I think that's the best way to handle it from a transparency perspective.
What's the frequency on these meetings?
There's going to be, you can, John can address
Yeah,
that
absolutely. So
more.
for the actual steering, like the project steering committee itself, I believe, and I don't have the actual scope of work in front of me at the moment, but you're looking at about maybe like 3 or 4 meetings total?
The scope says 6, maybe, and then,
Yep.
then 1 day to do all the assessment at the airport and so forth.
Correct, yep. So, about up to 6 meetings then that we be.
6 in a week, in a month?
No, over about an 18-month span.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, so yeah, your overall project duration, you're looking at an estimated 18 to 24 months for the airport master plan.
Okay, so Scott, let me ask you this question. Do we now ask for a motion to do this, and then at the next meeting, we present the slate and get that approved, or how do we do this?
Well, I think you have everybody here except for Tiffany Hall. I think we're in a position to move forward at the December meeting on the Garver contract. So if you want to discuss it now, that would be great in terms of your appointments.
So we can approve what you just read out loud.
Yeah. Okay, the motion is that we appoint to the stakeholders project steering committee for the master plan
Up to 3.
up to 3 Aviation Advisory Board members, 1 person from the Chamber of Commerce, not Tiffany Hall,
Right.
who is also on the Aviation Board, 1 person from Hetrick, 1 person from Eurotec, 1 from Lifestar, 1 from KU, 1 of a tenant, and obviously the city will be attending. Do I have a second?
One more question for
Yes.
discussion. So do we need to give the specific names, or can it be up to 3 and it can be alternated? Because that way we'd all get to participate if we wanted. Yes. Eric.
Sorry, I was going to.
I would say that I would defer to Garver on their preference. I think there's some continuity that comes with the same people being there. That's why I'm saying we go ahead and notice them. If you want to come and listen because you got time, or the topic that's going to be particularly covered at that event is going to be of interest to you because of background that you have, great. But I think if you would please call out the 3 of you that you're assuming are going to always be there, that will be helpful. And then beyond that, anybody else can attend, and certainly in here, if we want to have conversations afterwards, we can. Again, open records, open meetings are important, so there you go.
Absolutely. One other thing to note too as well is that we do provide draft deliverables throughout the report as well, and those are available for anyone's review. They are public documents, so if there are any folks who want to do actual document review, much like we did here with the runway feasibility study, to review those, provide comment, those can be just submitted back to us at any time as well too. So I think the point of having a rotating group, it might be a little tricky just if we have some continuity issues like Melissa had mentioned, but there are opportunities for everyone, including the overall general public, to have an opportunity to review all of the draft deliverables that we're producing as a result of this project.
And the whole board will, too.
I'd withdraw that.
Withdraw what?
That opportunity to rotate.
Okay, thank you. Okay, first let's get this motion out of the way. Do we agree that we want to set up this, the appointments to the steering committee?
I motion that we do a steering committee as stated by.
Okay, that's Jim.
I'll second the motion.
And Chris second. All right. Then what I'd like to do after that, after we vote on this, is if there are people who want to be on it, let's get them named and get it going on that. Okay, all in favor of the steering committee, say, okay, let's start with David.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye, unanimous. Okay, who wants to be on the committee? I know Chris will do it.
Everybody's like, no, I don't want to do it.
Who else wants to do it? And David, I believe, will put you on for the KU person. We've talked previously that you might be eligible for that.
I will volunteer.
Okay, Jim? And Chris? Any other board member?
I'll volunteer.
Okay, Carrie, you three are going to go to meetings. Okay. And I do have one volunteer in the audience that I know about, Greg Tillman, for the tenant potential. Are you still willing, Doug? I'm sorry, Doug.
Sorry?
Are you still willing?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay.
Clancy, I just have one question. With David being on there and 3 other board members on there, won't that be 4 board members, even though he's the Katy representative?
It won't matter though, because we're listing it as a meeting, right?
I think, as Melissa said, we'll notice these, and we'll publish them, and we'll be covered that way.
Okay.
And I think the goal here is that they're representative voices of different constituencies. And so, I'm hoping Garver's looked at what we've been looking at, and if you could comment on trying to make sure we have a distribution of different constituencies as we're looking at this.
Yeah, just in my professional opinion, from the list that I've reviewed for the overall group that's proposed, I think it's a really well-balanced representation of the community, understanding that, like I said, these are a community document. I personally was pretty excited to see that level of engagement. So I think it's going to create a very quality document that's going to reflect the city well.
My next question then is, Lloyd, do you want to nominate somebody from Hetrick? And Chad and Tina, do you want to nominate somebody from Eurotec tonight, or do you want?
I think staff can work with them
Okay.
After the meeting to
Okay.
find their nominees.
Okay, because we have a couple others we'll have to do too. Okay. Those are the ones then so far. Okay. All right.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Next, Lloyd, it's your turn, finally, for the FBO report.
Lloyd Hetrick with Hetrick Air Service. I don't know that I have a lot to add to it. I would like to say we were talking about the apron space. We really need to look at that apron that we have. I've got well knows if it pours down, we can't even get our customers to walk into the terminal building. We got a river right there on the north side of the terminal, and it is very embarrassing when they can't bring their suitcases and walk into the terminal building. So I'd like to see that high on the list, see if we can't get that accomplished as well. Terminal's looking great. We're almost there. Furniture will make a big difference, I know. Because of all the improvements on the outside area, we were forced to do our area, so we just got it all painted, and they actually got carpet laid today, so it will help improve that overall. So if you don't have any questions, I think that's all
Anybody have questions?
How's your usage so far? Are you seeing strong fuel sales till this point, or?
How's our what?
How's your fuel, like your fuel usage or pumpage?
Volume, well, we obviously with the ball game traffic is the big key, but we're seeing a constant flow of net jets, up, gear up, all of those are pretty solid coming in here. So yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Others? Okay. Next is board items. I guess, Scott, are you ready to talk about the CIP for KDOT airport improvement stuff?
Sure. So the first board item is the Capital Improvement Subcommittee report. I did work with the CIP group on projects to identify for the next year's round of KIP grants, and those were due yesterday. So, this program, again, is great for funding projects that will never make the FAA cut. The master plan work that Garver's been talking about tonight, and even this feasibility study would have never been funded by FAA. We would have had to beg and scream. FAA right now with the and Jason's nodding because of the scope of the current airport improvement program, there's just not enough money there. And that program is going through reauthorization right now at the congressional level. And we hope that, at least in the drafts that we've seen, more money will be put into that program. But this program with KDOT fills those gaps. And so those are the projects that we have listed here were identified as being things that, we'll never get money out of FAA on. So great projects to apply for KIP funding on. So this past fall, I think in August, I identified that we were working with University of Kansas because they were laying fiber to the KU hangar out there. We got really solid cost estimates working with our GIS staff and the University of Kansas contractor. We got numbers back that we just didn't have the budget to do this year. So we thought this would be a great opportunity to apply for funding through this program to bring fiber to the west side of the airport and to the terminal. On the terminal side, we already have that designed as part of the terminal improvements package that we already put together last year. So we've already got that designed. So hopefully we'll get some funding for that.
Can you share it?
Oh, yes. Sorry. Sorry, guys. Online. Forgot to do that again. Thank you, Greg.
You bet.
Same thing with the expansion of long-term parking area. We applied for bill funding for that. We haven't been successful in the second round. If we don't get that funding, again, we've already got it designed. So, it's sitting on the shelf. It's ready to bid. And we know that we have some parking needs out at the airport several times this fall with just the traffic going in and out at the airport, especially some of the, Lloyd knows, university teams that fly in and out. Parking's in high demand out there. So we've already got those project plans done. If we could get some funding to go ahead and build that out that we already have designed, that would be great. Okay. Our airport mowing equipment needs to be replaced. We need a place to put it. This was another project that I kind of started to work on when I became airport manager. I did commission an appraisal of the Don's Diesel building because it's a non-aviation business operating at our airport. Their lease expired a number of years ago, so there is provisions in the lease to purchase that hangar at the end of the lease term. No one's ever worked on that. If we could get some funding to acquire that building, I feel like that would be a good spot to house our maintenance equipment, and then maybe a little bit of money to do some small renovations for it. The next project was kind of identified during this current T-Hangar project. There's a short area of taxiway at the north end of the T-Hangars that connects the apron to taxiway D that needs a fix. And so another great project for KIP funding. So there's 2 grant applications there, one for design, one for construction. And finally, we got to talking about the need for, administrative space at the airport. If we, eventually have staff out there, we've had some great events out there. I think that another community hangar is needed. And so we applied for at least funding to put a design application together for that. There's lots of places to locate another community hangar at the airport. So those were the grant applications that we turned in yesterday.
Okay, thanks, Scott. And I will say that through various methodologies, the CIP committee reviewed all of this and strongly recommended that we go with all of it. So I would like a further confirmation by the board on that so that Scott can either reconfirm them or do whatever he needs to do that he hasn't already done. So may I have a motion to confirm these KIP applications?
I would make motion that we approve.
Okay. Chris made the motion. May I have a second?
Let's see. I'll second it.
Terry,
yeah.
Seconds. Okay. Greg, are you all in favor? Are you in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Terry?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Okay. Unanimous. Okay. Thank you. Okay. The next item is Marketing and Events Subcommittee report, and Tiffany has written up a couple of things. I don't think I really need to go over them, but if anybody's got questions, the main things we need to be concerned with right now, and I will address this in the final item that we have on scheduling, is that we need some leadership on the Aviation Youth Camp, who's in charge. And we have some other things that may be going on at the airport, like an open house down the road. So I don't know, Jim, have you and Chris have anything that you want to comment on besides what Tiffany wrote?
No.
Okay, can you guys get together with her and figure out who's doing some of this stuff? And let us know.
We'll work on that.
Okay. All right, Scott, do you have anything you want to add to that?
There was an update in one of Tiffany's notes. You guys had met with folks at the University of Kansas.
Oh, yeah.
Fiberglass Jayhawk. We
Oh, yeah.
have been in contact with the Alumni Association that has possession of those things, and there are some available, and the problem is they need one painted, and so they've had a problem with their painter, and we reached out to Mr. Decker, and hopefully we can get one painted and get it located at the airport.
That's cool.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, the next item is the City Boards and Commission Structures Committee. And as Scott alluded earlier, I've spent probably most of my time since August talking to various people in the city about this. What I would like to do tonight is relate to everybody that the Aviation Advisory Board, in case you're unaware, will remain independent. It will be under the connected, or is currently recommended by the BCSC to be under the connected city. I believe personally that it should be under the prosperity and economic development aegis with the city. So probably I will need to go in front of the city council one more time, or I need to write a letter to them stating the board's position on what it is we want to do. So I'd like some discussion on what you would like to do at this point. Somebody start. Greg?
Well, you know that I wrote a letter and sent it to everybody
I do.
about maintaining an independent board. As long as we maintain an independent board, I don't really care that much whether it's under Connected City or the Prosperity, which is economic development.
Okay.
I think the airport in the future is going to be a big contributor to the economic activity.
The second thing I may be asking the board to do tonight is to make a recommendation to the city commission that the city explore the possibility of transitioning the aviation board to an airport authority. I know that there are serious complications in terms of Kansas state law and so forth, but it has been done before, and if that's the right way to go, we probably need to explore the possibility.
Well, and that's why I asked John to include the review of it in
Exactly.
the master plan.
Exactly.
I did
And
that.
there's good documentation from the National Science Foundation and so forth that has, or National Academy of Sciences that has research on these topics.
Yeah, I
too.
think there was a PhD thesis and stuff
There's that,
about
and
it.
there's also other documentation.
Yep.
So-
It's- If we're going to really go a long way with the airport, it probably does need to be.
Given what we've been dealing with tonight and what we have yet to deal with, I think that probably is the right direction, but it's going to take some time. Okay, other comment, Carrie?
No comment, just to say I agree with everything you just said.
Dang. Chris?
No other questions?
Jim?
As far as the way that the city sees us, is there any economic or any value that would be different in which bucket we're in?
I don't know. I don't know. It's a strategic planning issue. So do you guys, I'm looking at the city lady.
Yeah, Melissa might have some
Do you-
thoughts,
do
or
you-
Angela on that.
Angela or Melissa?
So as far as which outcome within the strategic plan that you're assigned to, if your concern is about the separate function of this board, I don't know at the end of the day that it matters.
Okay.
Connected City is the outcome that I currently champion with my team of outcome people for Connected Cities, and that is multi-different departments and trying to, work forward on transportation, transit, and utilities, and anything that helps you move or stay safe when you drink or use the water. So I don't know that that's a bad place for it to be. On the economic development side, I think the master plan is going to be really important in the data that Scott's going to start to carry. So we will cross over into commitments in different ways. So if you stay under Connected City, I don't think that is a bad thing. Economic prosperity, which is led up by our economic development team. Britt Crumcano is the individual there. We've been we're working on key performance indicators, which we'll probably bring back to you here in the next few months to look at and see how we think that we might want to measure our success or lack of movement towards success. And a lot of that will be driven by what's done with the master plan. And so we'll be looking at that and helping also inform what we're going to be tracking to share with the governing body, meaning the city commission, and be able to allow them to see what we're achieving. So I don't know that it matters as much as your separate governance is what you're concerned about.
That makes a difference to my thinking.
Especially because she's watching out and basically advocating, so.
Well, and watching what we're doing too.
Right.
Okay. David, did you have anything you wanted to say?
No comments.
Okay. In that case, I guess what I think I've already been authorized by the board in August to talk to the city commission about anything that is related to this, and I think if I will be happy to do that to the city commission if I need to. So I don't think I need any further authorization. So as long as we're going to remain independent, I think we're in good shape. Okay? Any difference of opinion? Okay. And here is the difficult, well, I guess I need to go to the 4 states. Greg and Carrie, do you guys have anything else you want to add to what you've already said about the 4 states?
4 states. I actually wrote something up and sent it to Scott.
I posted it, Greg.
It's posted.
Oh, okay.
So if everybody has read it and has any other questions, fine.
I was really happy to hear that you'd gone with the tracking system. I had no idea.
I like that.
To be fair, I did not find the tracking system. I believe someone came to Scott, and Scott and Britt discussed it and brought it forward to Angela and I. So our airport manager is out there working for you guys.
We know he is.
We should pay him to be an airport manager.
So
Yeah.
is it
You
the
have our
same,
vote on that.
Scott, is it the same company?
Yes, it is, yes.
Oh, perfect.
Okay, and the next to the last item, you guys, we have to meet more often. Could I have some discussion on this? I think we should meet at least 12 times a year. But
Well,
I'm not sure I can get that through.
I think if you set it up as a monthly meeting, but allow it to be canceled if you don't have significant things to discuss, that's a good way to go. But having 583 pages of documents for one meeting is pretty overwhelming.
It's killer, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would
Carrie?
advocate for bi-monthly. It's tough for me personally with scheduling. So it's hard. 4 days a year shouldn't be hard, but it's hard for me somehow.
Okay.
So bi-monthly would be the most I would be able to commit to
Okay.
without having significant misses. And I like being a part of the board, so it's.
Exactly. Okay, David, do you have comment?
Yeah, I would support bi-monthly as well for similar reasons.
Chris?
I've appreciated our monthly meetings with Scott. When I meet with Scott, that helps us stay on board with what's happening. More frequent would be my first choice, but I understand we have, we've got board members that have challenges trying to make that many meetings. I could support bi-monthly.
Okay.
I'm on 5 boards. I could support bi-monthly
Okay.
also.
Well, it looks like
Yeah,
we have a vote here.
Yeah, I'm good with bi-monthly as well.
Okay.
Is that starting next year?
It may be starting sooner than that we've got the two things.
Well, the special ones, I don't mind. It's
advanced.
just, yeah, I just want to,
Yeah, we're setting the schedule for
2024.
2024. But we're probably going to have two special meetings before then, I hope.
okay.
Okay. Okay, do I have a motion to go to bi-monthly meetings?
So moved.
Greg? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Carrie? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Clancy, you're going to look at your calendars for scheduling the
Yeah.
items we deferred tonight?
Yes, let's do that. The bi-monthly schedule is on the agenda.
So those are the dates we'll go with?
Those will be the dates we go with on that. And
Wait a minute. I
shall
missed-
we look at schedule for both Eurotec and Dream Air tonight? Can we do that?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Shall we do that right now?
I mean, do they have dates to propose to us, or?
Part of the question is when this room is available. And I can't determine that from what I saw on the,
Probably 9 o'clock tonight would be good.
no. Okay. Scott, how do we determine this? Do we
Well, I've pulled up the December calendar for events that are listed. I think that's a good place to start.
You-
I
you don't think we
generally
can-
the bigger boards, I mean, our meeting wasn't on tonight's calendar.
No,
I don't know why
that
it
was what
wasn't.
I discovered.
But I think this is fairly trustworthy.
Do we want to try anything in November at all?
Yes.
Chad,
I'm in for
Tina?
November.
I would say from a staff perspective, if you're expecting some staff feedback on
Yeah.
these proposals, that would be a challenge.
Okay. Well, let's look at December. Everybody pull out your calendar.
Let me get that pulled up again. There's December's calendar.
You're talking at the same time, right?
I don't know.
Oh,
You don't have to,
It can
stick
be in
with
the
the
day, it can
Wednesday.
be
It's
anytime.
really what
Okay.
the applicants can get to and the board can
Okay.
get to. And now that we have you all together, it's probably a good time to
Yeah.
get those scheduled.
Okay.
I don't think the last 2 weeks of December would probably be very good.
No, let's look at the first 2 weeks of December. Okay.
How about,
Chad and Tina, have you got anything? A date in mind?
how about December 7th?
Second week of December?
First week, didn't you?
First or second, either one.
December 7th? It's a Thursday night?
We have a Board of Zoning, I got the calendar up here, Jim. There's Board of Zoning Appeals from 6:30 to 8:30. It doesn't mean you couldn't meet earlier in the afternoon.
Do we want to meet earlier? Can you?
I'm okay with earlier.
Okay, is everybody else okay with
I'll
that?
have to zoom in, but I can meet.
Okay. Okay, what would be a good time? How long do you guys,
What times does that start?
what day?
December 7th, this room is booked for the Board of Zoning Appeals if they have items on their agenda from 6:30 to 8:30.
6:30 to 8:30.
In the afternoon, December.
So we can meet, yeah, anytime.
How long do you guys need?
Calendars.
How about like 4 o'clock?
Would 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock do the job?
Yeah.
I will note that there is an EDC investor update that probably a few people might be invited to, Tiffany being one of them.
And that's on the 7th?
Yes, at 4 PM.
Do we need to look at another day? I mean, how many people do, I mean,
What,
Tiffany.
the 5th?
Yeah, I was going to throw out the 5th, too.
What's the 5th? What's happening on the 5th?
Tuesday.
City Commission meeting nights are generally not good.
Nah.
We do open
I don't know, I
bids,
think we're more important.
bids in here that afternoon as well.
I may have to
The
be there
4th.
anyway.
Just keep, what about the 4th?
she says the 7th would still work.
Okay.
The 7th would still work?
The
Okay.
4th would be better for me, but I can make the 7th work.
You know who plays on the 4th?
No.
Oh, no, that's actually Sunday night, isn't it?
I think it's a Monday.
No,
it's a
it's
Monday.
a Monday.
No, I meant, there's a night game for Packers and Chiefs.
Oh, that Monday?
No, I thought it was Monday.
Oh.
Oh, okay. I was like, I thought
Okay.
they played Sunday. Yeah.
Would the 4th work for everybody?
Is the room open, Scott? Sorry, I can't.
There's nothing on the calendar.
What time do we want to do it?
I think the afternoon's better.
Or whatever.
4 to 6?
I can make the 4th
Does
work,
that work with,
kind of like 4 o'clock.
Does that work with you guys, the 4th? Well, we're trying to get consensus here.
talking about it?
4 to 6 on the 4th. Does that work for? David, does that work for you?
Yep, no issues.
Okay. Shall we establish 4 to 6 on December 4th for Eurotec's presentation? Okay.
And then your plan is to have another special meeting to
Yes.
consider the Dream Air proposal?
Yes, now we need to work on that.
Yes.
Your neck.
Or a different week?
Up to you.
About the 7th. So that old people don't forget what happened the 2 days before, you know?
Chad, you're going on the 4th, is that right? 4th?
It sounds like.
Yeah.
Given the scheduling conflicts I heard, I'm just a question, is there anything that would prevent doing the proposals back to back?
So a suggestion might be that you do them on the 4th. You have a gap in between. We bring in dinner, and then you come back and you
That'd
do
work
the
for
second
me. Would that
one.
work for everybody else?
Sold.
Do them both on the 4th?
Yeah.
I heard dinner.
Yeah.
David, does that work for you? The 4th if we do them both?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Start earlier in the day then?
Do you want to start earlier?
Start at 4.
I get 3.
Start at 3? Does that work for everybody?
Like 3 to 5, and then a break for dinner?
Yep.
So then,
The question is, do we need 2 hours for each presentation, or do we need more like an
I don't know.
hour
But night-
with,
1 hour's fine, 1 hour's fine.
an hour with 30 minutes for questions, or something to that effect?
No more than 2 hours, so.
Okay.
Okay, you don't need more than 2, and that includes questions and all that?
Yeah.
Okay. Jen?
That's fine.
Okay, so start at 3? Is that right? Or do you want to start at 4? Up to you guys.
no, I wouldn't want to start earlier because in my mind, if there's anything conflicting between the two, we want to be able to ask them both.
Okay,
The
3
same.
o'clock. And both of you guys will be around, okay? And,
Start at 3,
go to,
Eurotech proposal, and then a little break for dinner, is that what I'm hearing?
Uh-huh.
And,
and then we'll
Dream
go to Dream Aviation,
6?
okay? Okay, so 3 to 5 or so for Eurotech, 6 to 7 plus whatever for Dream Aviation, and a break for dinner. Does that work for everybody? Okay, we got it. If there is no other business tonight, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Greg?
I'll second.
Chris? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Stand adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
We did.
Yes, there's another one for you.
Oh.